Part 1. The young girl walked to the edge of the Blackwoods and stood in front of the imposing facade of the largest forest bordering the Elven kingdoms. The trees were almost a few hundred feet in the air, their roots tangling across the strangled ground while the bark had this strange glow to it. A shiver ran down her spine as she tried to collect her thoughts and calm her racing mind. There was no sugarcoating how dangerous this forest could be. She didn't care, though. She had a job to do. She took a deep breath and readied her mind. Here we go. Don't fail, Saris. She moved closer to the trees and climbed up on one of them. Concentrate on the bark. Feel the tree's heartbeat. Rustling leaves and swaying branches are its voice. Listen to it. Feel it. Understand it. Her pointy ears twitched excitedly as she closed her eyes, calmly remembering aloud her professor's teachings as a swarm of green energy began to surround her. She carefully used her magic to tie a blindfold over her eyes, and she breathed deeply as the magic surrounded her. Her mind's eye changed to visualize the world around her, the magic taking hold of her. An invisible hand reached out to guide her as she took her first footsteps. The magical energy swirled around her and began to take effect. Massive tree roots moved up and around, providing a stepping stone for her dainty elven feet. Trees shuffled across the ground, providing her a path forward. Mighty branches, harder than steel, gently moved aside and provided a path. She could sense there was something strange in the air as she continued to walk forward. The trees were all talking to each other, a modicum of both fear and excitement. Some trees spoke of being unable to breathe due to a toxic smoke, then suddenly breathing in fresher air than they'd ever tasted. Other trees speak of strange noises of grinding and cutting. Others speak of strange birds, far higher in the clouds than they had ever witnessed. Saplings spoke of a strange rain that made them grow faster, while others spoke of the corpses of the dead being carried away and the fallen being removed in the dead of night. Saris continued to walk blind on the path the trees were supplying her as she daintily wandered through the forest until the trees deposited her into a clearing. She could feel the soft brush of grass under her feet. Listening closer, she heard the directions given to her by the rustling leaves and creaking wood, telling her to keep moving forward. Her training told her to trust the trees, trust the area, sense their whispers, and go for it. Saris stopped feeling tree branches and roots underfoot as she felt a slight incline followed by green grass. The trees kept whispering, "Keep going, go forward." She followed their direction. So much preparation went into this, caring for a garden of flowers for a year, performing rituals and rites revolving entirely around blessing trees and scenery, making a bond with a water spirit and tree spirit to strengthen her connection to the ether. The daily ritual of lovingly planting a new sapling at the forest's edge and blessing it with nutrient-rich water spells. It was working. Flower patches were appearing at her feet. Trees nearby grew several feet higher, stronger and greener. Groundwater rose up several feet, allowing the forest to take advantage of it. Nutrients and detritus and decay on the forest floor accelerated their decomposition, creating a thin carpet of fresh nutrients for the forest. Saris continued to follow the forest's instructions, her every step nourishing the ground for the next generation of trees, as flowers and grass grew fast and proud in her footsteps. She kept moving forward. The forest's borders expanded with her as she reached a clearing and kept moving. The forest's whispers slowly faded the further away she got, and she slowed her pace. Suddenly, a loud vocalization erupted from the forest as she stopped dead in her tracks. Every tree, grass clump, and flower suddenly screamed, "Stop! Be still!" Saris froze. Trees and forests know when their caregivers and mages are in danger and know when to alert them. Saris removed her blindfold. What greeted her was an enormous machine, a gigantic mechanical scorpion-like beast of steel, plating and grinding gears staring straight at her. It was at least 30 feet high, 6 massive feet with large claws at their tips, the joints covered in armor plating and heavy steel. The machine had a face, 6 large glass panes that looked like eyes with armor plating arranged to appear like a face. Mounted under its body was an array of machinery looking like saw blades, drills, and what Saris knew to be cannons, just like those used by the mountain elves. Saris was frozen solid. She couldn't move, out of sheer biblical terror at the sight of this enormous monster staring straight at her. She closed her eyes by instinct as a bright light, a laser of some kind, appeared and washed over her for several seconds. She opened one eye sheepishly, looking around her as if she expected to find herself in heaven. No, she was still in the field, looking up at the giant spider machine. Suddenly, a loud vocalization came from the beast. An amplified but definitely male voice in clear Elvish. "Put some goddamn pants on!" The beast yelled out, echoing across the forest for miles around before it turned around and stomped away from her. "I cannot believe this bullshit. They told me this planet was clean!" Saris stood there dumbfounded for what seemed an eon, before she magicked up her huntress gear and sprinted at it, following it. "Wait! Wait!" Saris yelled out as her leather shoes frantically tried to catch up to the giant machine. Saris's elven feet were able to keep up with it barely. With a few lucky helpings from passing trees, she was able to jump and climb on one of its legs. With great difficulty and a little bit of magic, she was able to clamber onto its head. Her elven body allowed her to keep up with its swaying and bouncing as it clawed its way through the jagged terrain, eventually leading into a mountain range. "Mount Caridian, what is it doing here?" she asked herself as she held on to some object sticking out the top of its head. "I'm going home! Get off my roof!" the machine yelled out, trying to shake her off. "No, no, no!" Saris squealed as she held on for dear life, reaching the foot of the mountain. "Fine. You asked for it, girlie!" the machine yelled, drastically increasing its speed. It charged up the mountain, perfectly handling a sheer vertical incline within a few minutes of starting its climb. Its giant claws dug into the solid rock, and it charged up the mountainside, quickly reaching a point where it could climb to the side and begin walking along the jagged peaks like an actual spider. Saris held on for dear life, sometimes screaming in terror as it jumped across mile-wide chasms with no effort and climbed up near 90-degree vertical cliffs as if it was just a casual stroll through a wheat field. Saris could not help but continue to scream in terror, clinging tightly to the object she was holding on to, and continued to scream in terror as the beast stopped. She continued to squeal in fear even as the beast stopped and its pilot climbed out. He stood in front of her, tapping his foot impatiently as she squealed and gasped her terror out. It took her a while to calm down. "You have a lovely scream. It's like constantly shattering glass being scraped across a blackboard," he said, smiling at her sarcastically. "I would ask, however, that you stop screaming, as I only have one pair of ears, and I would rather not replace them." Saris was speechless. A human, an actual human, was standing in front of her, relatively tall, wearing heavy armor and carrying a portable cannon. Brown hair, blue eyes, smooth round ears, and a strange smirk that showed perfect sparkling clean teeth. Saris couldn't really speak as she stared at him in sheer awe, shock, and terror. "So, you gonna let that go or what?" he said again, still smirking. Saris squealed and let go in a panic, losing her balance as she toppled over. He grabbed her arm, stopping her from falling over. She blinked as she felt the cold steel of his armor against her skin. This was real. "Oh my gods!" "Relax. Please relax." "Jeez," he said, and used a machine nearby, calling a platform that gently lowered them to the ground. "Are all people on this planet so jumpy?" You are a human?" Saris said, pointing at him as she backed away. "Yeah. Whoa, wait, you know what humans are?" It was his turn to be confused and shocked. "Oh, of course! You don't know what elves are?" Saris replied in kind, now just as confused. "Okay. Obviously we need to have a little chat. But, I did tell you to put some pants on." He gestured to her huntress clothing. "I am wearing pants. I use this to hunt deer in the forest. It's a common garb for us," Saris protested and checked her gear. The human rolled his eyes and started walking away, holding his hands in the air while shaking his head. "Why?" "Hey, wait!" Saris squealed and charged after him. It was only now Saris noticed where she was. In the center of a massive factory complex. A factory complex that looked like it was built specifically to manufacture the very same machine that she came here in. There were hundreds of them, in many different configurations, styles, and paint colors, all built to offer a different function. They were all arrayed along the ground in a parking lot. Their legs were tucked neatly underneath them, halving their effective size, stacked on top of each other like crates and boxes. Other machines, cranes, trains, and other things were charging about, assembling parts, pieces, and components, then slotting them into place. Sparks were flying, the air filled with the sounds and sirens of a massive industry. Saris followed the human while trying not to panic at the sight of hundreds of those powerful war machines. Was he assembling an army? Was he preparing an invasion? The elders needed to be told about this, urgently. "Come on in. Wipe your feet and have a seat. Coffee, tea, soda, or juice?" the human said, offering her entry into a building in a gentlemanly manner. Tea, please?" Saris sheepishly responded as she ushered herself inside. The sight that greeted her was, to say the least, far from what she was expecting. It was a cozy worker's hut with shag carpeting and wood walls. A far contrast from the rest of the place. It looked like it was cautiously crafted, handmade even, with a dining table, chairs, a comfy single bed, effectively an entire house cooped up in a small but cozy space. By the time Saris got seated, he presented her with tea and some cookies. "Thank you." She looked at him expectantly. "Marcus," he replied, helping himself to a can of soda from a mini-fridge nearby. A few minutes of awkward silence followed, Saris trying to think of what to say, and Marcus trying his level best not to stare. "So you're a human then?" "Pretty much. Apart from some upgrades here and there, I'm human." "So you're an elf then?" Marcus replied in kind. Yes, I am. I'm an elf of Whitebark Sanctum. I guess the term you humans used to use is wood elves, I think," Saris said, putting down her now empty teacup. "Why?" Marcus said, looking up at the ceiling. "Sorry." "Don't worry about it." He reached out, offering his right hand. "Captain Marcus James Flint, independent pilot operating on behalf of Jupiter Drive Yard's starship manufacturers." Saris took his hand and shook it. "Saris Marinius. I'm just a hunter and practicing mage." "Pleasure. Now you said you know about humans, yes? Please do tell." "Well, history books say that humans were on Verinia around 6,000 years ago. That's when the first human was ever seen. There was civilization, wars, conflicts, and other such stuff after that. Then one day some kind of plague appeared and wiped them out. It didn't take long, they were just gone. It's been like that for a few hundred years now, and suddenly out of the blue you and your machines arrive. So..." Saris explained what she could according to her limited knowledge. Marcus looked up in the air with an eye roll again. "Why?" Saris, seemingly aware she wouldn't know exactly why he kept doing that, continued. "So, you are human then? So humans survived, I guess? What's a starship? What's a Jupiter Drive and what's a yard? What's a pilot?" "Okay, so, history lesson. There's this planet a fair bit away that's called Earth, Kay? It's the cradle of humanity. It's where we came from. About 6,000 years ago, a dying precursor civilization known only as the Greys came to Earth and abducted thousands of people, spreading them across the galaxy in a strange experiment. Before the experiment could accomplish anything, this precursor civilization died out," Marcus began to explain. Saris's jaw hit the floor, the wheels in her head suddenly coming to a stop as he began to explain. "So what you basically told me is that this planet was one of the worlds the Greys used to conduct this experiment they never completed. And the people they dropped here were all killed off because of some kind of disease barely a few centuries ago. And you've been here all along, and unwittingly got into this strange experiment along with the humans. 'Cause, yeah, I did do a scan on you. You have no human DNA in you. So, it seems contrary to my previous plans, I will be sticking around for a bit longer." Marcus cheerfully retrieved a new can of soda with a smile. Saris leaned back in her seat, jaw open, shocked eyes and heavy, slow breaths, as she just started processing the information she heard. She was so concentrated on trying to understand the shit she just heard, she failed to notice her already loose-fitting top fall off. Marcus simply rolled his eyes and looked up at the ceiling. "Why, God! Seriously? Why?" Saris remained still for a few more minutes before Marcus got up and walked back outside. Time to get back to work. New work. Got to start rebuilding the factory to start building archaeological equipment. When you're ready to go home, let me know, and I will give you a lift back to your forest. Saris watched, her elven ears twitching impatiently as Marcus the human typed away at the console on his wrist. She was staying as close to him as possible, not wanting to get lost in the mass labyrinth that was the gigantic factory complex she found herself in. Saris felt very, very small. Despite the fact she was barely an inch shorter than Marcus, she felt as minuscule as a child. To her left, arrayed in dozens of rows of perfect parallel lines, were the imposing scorpion-like machines she came here on. Hundreds of them, armed, loaded, ready for operations. To her right, giant box-like machines, multiple stories high, the roofs of which were moving with the writhing mass of mechanical arms and twisting gears. In front of her, an ocean of belts and machines all leading to one large building looming in the far distance, the belts saturated in components. A massive contrast to the scene behind her, a simple shack made of what appeared to be cargo crates or boxes turned into a humble home surrounded by trees and plants. Saris carefully looked around and counted the machines, a mixture of strange objects and other objects that she could at least partially identify, all carried along massive complexes of belts and conveyors, some on the ground, others elevated atop poles. She carefully considered what was along one particular belt line, and failed to identify the component. It was a white box made of some strange reflective substance with glowing green and blue lights on one side, holes and ports on the other. She looked at another belt, stacked high with varying sizes of iron, steel, and copper gears, with another carrying copper strings. The factory was awash with a strange symphony of machinery, clanging metal and screeching gears all conforming together to form a strange, discordant symphony of industry. Saris's elven ears twitched and moved to recognize various sounds and noises, knowing some and being scared by others. The sudden sparking of a welding machine made her jump, while the clang of a plate press made her slightly more relaxed. "Oi! What you thinking, Elfie?" Marcus said, breaking her concentration. "Oh, sorry. This place is huge." "What are you actually building?" Saris asked, startled a bit. "Oh yeah, I didn't actually tell you what I'm here for, did I? This factory is designed to mass-produce these magnificent beasts," Marcus said, gesturing proudly towards the folded scorpion spider robot. "Okay. Need more? Okay. These are called the JDY Epsilon Series Discount Model Colony Service Unit. To shorten the explanation needed, these are giant service robots piloted by a person, designed to help planetary colonies function and build. How can I better explain this, golems? It's like a giant super helpful golem thing you can use to build almost anything," he explained, gesturing to its parts and components. "Oh wow, why are they that big? What can it do exactly?" Saris replied with a raised brow. "Anything. Construction, mining, farming, harvesting, cargo transport, factory building. It even has its own built-in assembler and piping system so you can build anything on the go. Very useful feature for any startup colony. I then kit them out, transport them off-world, and sell them. They are dirt cheap, but it's honest work," Marcus explained proudly with a smile. So there are other humans out there?" Saris asked, her face brightening up. "Yup. How many people you got in your home village?" Marcus asked, gesturing for Saris to get onto a platform. Saris climbed on, trying to be careful to follow the various signs and lettering on the ground and components telling what was safe and what wasn't. "About 200, including the crazy wizard in the observatory. I'm not sure he's crazy anymore, really." Marcus let out a scary, hearty laugh. "Oh God, we have planetary colonies nearly everywhere in the galaxy now. Humans, just from the colony ships in the Sol Confederacy, number just below 900 billion. Saris let out a terrified squeak and pulled her hands over her mouth in shock. Marcus simply rolled his eyes with a sigh. Why do you keep doing that?" "What's with the why thing?" Saris barked in annoyance. "Oh, I don't know, let me think. I came to this planet thinking I'm going to be alone here, then I find an elf." "Elves!" Creatures humanity has always thought of as fantasy creatures in our darkest dreams. Not only that, but also a naked elf girl blindfolded in the middle of a forest. "What? Seriously?" Marcus bellowed in a tone of frustration that Saris had never heard before. So, I'm a little bit annoyed here. I was told this planet was unoccupied. That's why I built a damn factory. Now suddenly I have to stop all of my operations, rebuild the factory to be less than 1/10 of its current size in order to solve a murder mystery. Now I'm told that elves are real. Magic is a thing, and I had ancestors on this planet. Yeah. It seems only fair at this point. I aim my head to the heavens and ask the gods what kind of sick joke they're playing. Like seriously, Marcus bellowed, more frustrated and annoyed. Like holy crap! What sick joke are you assholes playing? Marcus yelled out angrily, waving his hands in the air as his voice echoed across the valley. Saris simply bowed her head, now feeling a bit shy. Marcus raised the platform they were on and walked towards the cockpit hatch of the giant machine that brought Ceres here in the first place. As they approached, Maris suddenly turned on his heels and looked Ceres dead in her sparkling green eyes. Marcus grabbed her, pulling her close, and Ceres, too scared to know what to do, allowed his hands to roam freely. And to add insult to injury, the first sentient life form I encounter is the most magnificently beautiful woman I have ever seen. And even more so, she seems to enjoy wearing the equivalent of a loose-fitting denim bikini. I am single, actively looking to start a family. We're genetically compatible judging from the scan I did, and yet, I can do nothing, Marcus said and let her go. He raised his hands and bellowed again. Seriously, why? Ceres blushed, her cheeks turning an almost beet red. Marcus opened the hatch and waved his hand. In, he commanded. Not willing to annoy the half-machine, half-human monster in front of her, Ceres, still blushing furiously, climbed in and sat on one of the seats inside the machine. She marveled at the sight of hundreds of buttons, dials, switches, and levers surrounding her, and wondered what the peculiar pointy thing near the neck of the other chair was. Marcus climbed in moments later and sat in the seat next to her. He ignored her for now. Ceres gasped audibly as the strange pointy thing slid into Marcus's neck, and a short black rope connected his head to the seat. His body went limp for a few seconds, and then he sat up straight again, unconcerned there was something stuck in the back of his neck. Okay then. Factory reconstruction. Where's my BP file? There it is. Import string, copy, paste, install. Remove old folder and ready. Let's see, Marcus idly said to himself as he worked. Ceres remained jaw open, eyes wide as the empty hull suddenly disappeared, replaced by the world around them as if the machine's cockpit suddenly became invisible. The machine began to move around and raised up. Ceres got her first decent look at the factory complex from this high up and could see greater detail. A strange haze of heat emanated from some parts of the factory, while smokestacks bellowed thick sludge from their tops. All the smoke was sucked into some square boxes on the sides of other buildings dotted around the factory. What are those? The things sucking up smoke? Ceres asked. Air purifiers. They clean out the toxic substances like sulfur dioxide and chlorine and other highly toxic chemicals from the factory's production cycles, then filters all of it and releases carbon dioxide and oxygen. In short, bad toxic air comes from factory. Bad air gets into purifier. Good air and tree food comes out. Toxic sludge gets used in other stuff. Rinse, repeat, Marcus replied. This explains what the trees were talking about, how they could breathe fresher air than normal. It also explained why the forest was so cheerful during the start of her magic ritual earlier that day. The machine continued to move around the factory, showing Ceres its sheer ridiculous size, with her audibly gasping in shock as she saw that the structures continued past the horizon. By the goddess, the Austenai wouldn't be able to do this in 1,000 years. How long did it take you to build this? About 2 months, give or take. Production cycle is... Marcus brought up a graph. This one Ceres understood. All arrows pointing up with numbers next to them. 280,000 components per day. Ceres let out a shocked squeak, failing to notice her top once again falling off. How, my gods? You make 200,000 things in a day? Every day? Jesus. This is a very small factory. We have planet-sized factory complexes called Forge Worlds that produce upwards of several million components per hour. But yes, the factory is in full swing. I'm gonna have to rebuild it, though. Just need to do a bit of setup first, Marcus replied, rolling his eyes at the sight of Ceres's exposed breasts. What exactly are you going to do? Ceres asked. Dismantle the factory and start producing specific items small scale. After that, I'm going to get on my ship, go home and inform my bosses what I found. After that, the feds will handle the rest. In short, I will be on the receiving end of the single most hated evil in the universe. Bureaucracy, Marcus said with a crooked grin. The machine moved over to a small empty field where a number of flying winged robots were flying around. You can't dismantle this! You can't! Ceres squealed in desperation. Why's that? Marcus asked as he started his work. Ceres failed to answer as she saw the construction process. He built various warehouses and crates built to store devices. She saw the process of a building being dismantled, and it amazed her to no end. A hatch opened up, freeing the insides of the assembly unit. Then drones picked the machine apart with precision. The arms, the grinders, the cutters, all of it, stripped down to nothing in seconds. The empty shell containing all the mechanical arms and metal presses was folded up like a piece of paper, then plopped into storage with a loud metallic clunk. Marcus was about to press a big blue button labeled Purge when Saris cried out and stopped his hand. "Stop, please! You can't remove all this." "And why is that?" he asked, staring at her as one of her exposed breasts rubbed against his arm. "I have to tell the elders about this. I have to tell everyone! They have to know what's going on. They have a right to know. And besides, this is our home, and you are here building on it. So the least you can do is show what's going on, then apologize for doing so," she yelled, crossing her arms. Marcus thought in silence for a few moments. He let out a loud, annoyed groan and closed the cap on the big blue button. "Fine. Holy ball-busting Christmas. Point me to your village. Let's take your naked ass home." "I'm not naked," she yelled back. "Says the one with her tits hanging out." "Cover yourself, woman, my God," Marcus bellowed in response. Saris blushed wildly once again as she hastily restored her modesty. Marcus resumed building his factory warehouses, and Saris once again marveled at the process of what was essentially a very complicated and massively scaled-up version of the same process as assembling IKEA furniture. After this was done, Marcus moved closer to the larger structure near the middle of the factory, then began to climb its side. It was a lot larger than Saris anticipated, feeling a bit sick as they climbed up its surface vertically. Even in the stable state, the machine made the journey. They appeared inside a large hole on its side and went through. Saris, once again amazed at the sheer scale, gasped in awe at the sight. She looked around to find the chrome-plated, sterile insides of a large hangar, with several large vehicles hanging or clamped from various parts of the wall, ceiling, and floor. "What is this?" In partnership with La Castillo de Mechanicus, LLC, the JDY, Caliban-class exploratory battleship. This is a starship. It is a ship that allows me to travel among the stars, and you are in its hangar bay, where I store smaller ships and vehicles for general use, Marcus said matter-of-factly, and opened the hatch above them. Oh my gods, that's a thing!" Saris exclaimed, shocked to her core for the umpteenth time. "Yep. How else could I get here?" Marcus simply replied and helped Saris out of the cockpit. But magic is... Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from any form of magic. In the same way, any piece of magic is indistinguishable from any sufficiently advanced form of technology. Supernatural is a null word that does nothing but waste time and divide people, slowing progress. Science and magic are simply different ways of accomplishing the same task, and the only reason one is dominant above the other is because nobody bothered to try both, Marcus said, looking at Saris. She scrunched her nose and scoffed, feeling like she had just been lectured by a guild mage scholar. "Gee, thanks." Marcus just chuckled to himself and walked towards a control panel. After pushing a few buttons, a vehicle from the back of the hangar appeared, and Saris questioned its existence. "The hell is that thing? I can tell it's a flying machine, but why are its wings so small and floppy?" Saris asked. "My 36 Stingray infantry support gunship. It's a helicopter. Those aren't wings, they're blades, propeller blades. They spin fast enough to produce a downward force that allows flight. This one is a new version of an old design called the Hind that I converted into a personnel carrier. Now, Marcus commanded. "What exactly are we going to do?" Saris asked while obeying his commands. They both entered the rear of the vehicle and Marcus strapped her into a seat near the back. "Put this on and do not take it off until I tell you." Saris obeyed, looking at the strange hat he handed to her. She nodded in approval, and he repositioned a strange cushion closer to her mouth, then stepped away from her. Check, can you hear me?" Marcus's voice suddenly came into her ears. "Yes. How did—" Radio. "Have you ever held a can or container on either end of a string and spoke to your friends?" he said through her headset. "Yes, of course," she replied. "Same principle, just a lot more sophisticated, and also no wire or cable. This makes sure you can hear me through the whole trip," Marcus said as he hopped into the cockpit. "Where are we going?" Saris asked again. "To your little village. I'm going to deposit you there, talk to your elders, then go around kingdom to kingdom and pick up a delegate. As you said, I gotta show everyone my factory, so I shall. But we will do it on my terms, Marcus replied sternly. The engine started up, winding gears and spinning blades spooling up to a deafening whine outside the helicopter. The 6 blades on top unfolded from their position and splayed out, then began to spin at ludicrous speeds. A mechanism grabbed the vehicle's undercarriage and dragged it out onto a platform. The mechanism moved it away from the starship's exterior, giving it free rein to fly unchallenged. With a bit of thrust, the vehicle lifted off the platform and rapidly soared through the sky towards Ceres's home village. Ceres began to question her actions. As much as she wanted everyone to see the incredible miracles this creature could make, she wondered why everything was so heavily armed. Even an elf with a bow could clearly see what was or was not a weapon, and the thing she was riding in was armed to the teeth. She could piece together what part of the factory went where, and could reasonably guess that at least 5 of the production lines she saw were making some kind of weapon or ammunition for weapons. Her train of thought, however, quickly derailed. You know, Ceres, I gotta say something. It pains me to say it, but I'ma say it, Marcus said over the radio. What? You are a very, very brave woman, you know that? Or you are psychotically crazy. I mean, if I come across an unknown battle mech staring at me, I think the last thing I would decide to do is ride it like a bucking bronco for nearly 60 miles. I mean, I have to ask, what were you thinking? Marcus asked. I wasn't. I can't remember. I actually don't know why I chased you. Heat of the moment, I guess, she replied sheepishly. Fair enough. Adrenaline does odd things to one's capacity for decision-making. I'll let that slide. Still, though, that was awesome. To do that? Jump on a machine, then hang on it for 60 miles? That's good. Marcus's voice was deeper, gravelly now. The tone he spoke in made Ceres blush, and she remained silent for the rest of the trip, choosing only to talk to give directions. Just before sunset, White Bark Sanctum on the edge of the great forest appeared in front of them, the first few plumes of smoke rising from chimneys for the evening meal. Part 3. The village was in a full panic as the heavy gunship landed in the fallow field by the territory's edge. The massive beast flew by fast overhead, then spun round and moved to land vertically in the field. Elders grabbed pitchforks, and the hunters grabbed bows or whatever they could to defend themselves from what they perceived as an attack. It came in very low, barely grazing the tree line and almost giving half the forest a shave as it flew down. It circled again, then landed in the fallow field, a swarm of any able-bodied men in the village ready to meet it. They held their pitchforks high and readied their bows as the rear of the vehicle opened to reveal the daughter of the village chief smiling at them. Instead of a surprise attack by the mountain elves, Ceres. The weaponry held by the crowd slowly lowered as they tried to understand what was going on. She waved a hand at them and smiled. Her father, a burly, muscled old man with a sword and plate mail, stands there, arms crossed and brow furrowed as he notes his daughter's little smirk. He had seen that cute little smirk so many times through the 21 years he had known his little girl. It's a smirk that every father that has ever existed has seen at least once in his life. The cute little smirk that every child has at least once when they are caught with their hand in the cookie jar. The kind of smile that begs for no repercussions upon being discovered red-handed. The kind of smirk that says, I'm cute, therefore I did nothing wrong. Ceres's father approached, arms crossed with furrowed brow, and, where have you been, young lady? He bellowed as he met her gaze. Hi, father. What's up? Ceres said, completely unsure of how to proceed. How could she proceed from here exactly? How exactly do you explain to your parent that you attempted to climb on a giant crab spider war machine piloted by a member of a supposedly extinct species that built a giant continent-sized factory? Where does anyone start? A noise nearby announced the casual exit of Marcus, the helicopter's pilot, as his heavy boots hit the floor. He let out an annoyed groan and approached the rear of his vehicle. Oh man, what a rush. Sorry about the low flyby there. Hit a bit of wind shear and it threw me off. Jaws hit the floor, as did various tools and weapons as this human stood in front of the group. Eyes went wide as he casually, as if this were an every occurrence, extended a hand to Ceres's father for a gentlemanly greeting. As if in a trance, the burly elf replied in kind and barely managed to stop himself from screaming. It was real and not a ghost. Greetings? Human? What are you doing here? Rude. How about introductions first? Name's Marcus. Yours is? Marcus said with a smile. Thorn Encardia Marinius. I am the chief of this village, he replied with his jaw still on the floor. Huh, so you're an elf. Slightly shorter than I expected. No offense, just saying. Comfy spot you have here? Marcus said as he looked over the village. The assembled crowd carefully moved closer to inspect the strange machine. One of the farmers was about to touch a cylindrical object on the side of the wing when Marcus stopped him. Do not touch the explosive device. He loudly bellowed with more authority than he had any need to use. The farmer and surrounding persons quickly moved away from the wings, focusing more on the rest of the machine. Saris quickly hugged her father and the two shared a family moment. Thorn held his daughter close, calming her down. She was shaking, stressed, and otherwise scared. He knew all too well how his own little kitten behaved when she was scared or stressed and hugged it all out of her. So, is there a king here? Or where's the leader at? Apparently, I need to find people that look important and have a chat with them, Marcus said. What? I mean, I'm happy to take you to the kingdom, but I need an explanation of what's going on here, Thorn said as Saris's grip loosened. Look, I don't have the time, so here's the short story. I'm a human, but I was not born in this world. I came here, but now I have to go from here, but the scantily clad creature there says I can't go. So here I am, and I need to talk to the people in charge so I can figure out what to do. I really shouldn't. I should be out of here and in space broadcasting to the fleet, but hey, apparently I have more important things to do. Marcus's voice was full of resentment and frustration. Look, dude, I'm not in the mood. Get your ass on board and take me to the capital or king or whoever. I don't have much time. Saris can fill you in. Hurry up! Marcus's tone was becoming increasingly agitated and everyone could tell. His anger was visible and audible and everyone backed away. Saris directed her father inside the vehicle and sat him on a chair. She showed Thorn how to use the headset and helmet as the screaming whine of the helicopter's engines roared to life. The peasantry felt amazed at how the massive beast of steel and machinery slowly lifted off the ground and quickly vanished over the horizon. The trip would last only 20 minutes, as Saris explained, somewhat feverishly, the circumstances to her father, who was now in a mild panic as they rapidly approached the kingdom. The two marveled at the sight of the capital's walls appearing beneath them, the first ever time anyone on Savarii has ever seen the kingdom from the air. Thorn's chest puffed out with pride as he saw the main kingdom of his proud homeland. Funny, this place. Marcus yelled out from the cockpit, his voice transmitting through their headsets. For a bunch of wood elves, I expected a lot less stone battlements and castle walls. We grew out of that a few thousand years ago thanks to your ancestors, human. Wars between us made us rethink our own ancestry. The stone walls don't serve much of a purpose anymore, Thorn replied, his tone becoming somber. Oh? That didn't sound nice. You'll have to explain that one when we get on the ground. We're coming in for a landing, Marcus said as the vehicle slowed. Land outside the castle walls. The capital is familiar with flying machines, but yours might cause an uproar. See that red spot marked by painted grass? Land there, Thorn said. Copy that, hold on to something. This thing is a bit fiddly with landings, Marcus said as he deployed the landing gear. The gunship was moving a bit too fast for a decent landing. Saris nearly lost her lunch from the G-forces as the gunship swiveled and swayed sideways and frontways as it slowed down. Thorn turned slightly pale as he glimpsed the ground from his window a bit too close for comfort. The gunship sank into the grassy ground a bit from its weight as it landed, the wind causing some other nearby machines to suffer a bit of damage or move from their own spots. Saris and Thorn quickly unbuckled their seatbelts and returned their headsets. Thorn wobbled on his feet a bit before he exited, and had to stop himself from kissing the ground. Several guardsmen and the owners of the surrounding machinery approached the strange vehicle. Huh. Elven flying machines. Wood, metal. Oh, the steampunk fanboys will have a field day with this place. Friggin' clockwork planes and shit made out of wood and iron gears. Mountain elves have got to be my next port of call, that's for sure, Marcus said to himself as he got out of the cockpit. He was stopped in his tracks by an elf girl with stars in her eyes and a cutesy expression, this one wearing slightly more than Saris. Only slightly, though. Before she could say anything, Marcus stopped, turned and faced his machine. Why, seriously, why? Why is there yet another abnormally hot, half-naked elf chick? This is not a harem anime! He whined as he slammed his head against his vehicle's metal hull. Sarah stood beside the other girl as they both watched the spectacle. Guards and owners wandered over to find a human, an actual human, frustratingly bashing his head against a wall. The fact a human was here was enough to sate the ire of those nearby and send guards charging into the palace grounds to inform their commanders. Saris and the new girl looked at each other. "It's a long story. Just bear with it for now," Saris said with a shy smirk. "Saris Marinius," she said, extending a hand in friendship. Jacqueline May, Clan Stonewall. "Nice to meet you." She shook Saris's hand with enthusiasm. Thorn quickly mustered the guard and told them to inform the palace an emergency meeting was needed. After a few of the locals gathered around the gunship, Marcus loudly yelled to not touch the weaponry again and let the crowd gawk at his toy. Marcus took stock of the situation and made some personal notes. Wood elves like Saris were slightly taller and darker skin, sort of like a light tan. Mountain elves like Jacqueline had almost pale complexions. The scene around him resembled something like a comic con with a clockpunk elf theme, the various vehicles around him resembling early versions of flying machines that humans used to try before the Wright brothers did their thing. Except these worked. So, hold up. You got flying machines and everything already. Why'd you appear with pitchforks and spears when I showed up? Marcus asked Thorn. What? Oh, relations with the various kingdoms are getting a bit strained of late. Not that we were expecting an attack, but better safe than sorry after all, Thorn said. Jacqueline looked up at him with sparkling eyes. Hi. And you? Marcus asked. How did you build that? What's it made of? Barkwood? Steel bark? How many gears are in it? What's the gear ratio? What's the max speed? It's barkwood, isn't it? Tell me! Jacqueline barked at him, coming uncomfortably close as she barraged the poor bastard with questions. Cease your fluffiness, Marcus bellowed, making Jacqueline back away. Everyone looked at each other, very confused. Cease your fluffiness. Marcus simply laid his head in his hands, defeated, and slumped against his helicopter's hull. To answer your questions, a overly excited one I built in my factory. No, not barkwood, no, not steelwood. You sound less enthusiastic than I expected, Jacqueline responded, brow furrowed. No shit, Sherlock. Marcus groaned angrily and stood up. Let's just say, because of all this nonsense, I am going to spend the next 6 months trapped in an office filling out more paperwork than anyone here will see in their lifetimes, Marcus said with visible anger. What is the meaning of this? A loud, very authoritative voice suddenly bellowed across the valley. Everyone dropped to their knees and bowed in the presence of the king as he walked up the hill. The tall elf man approached and scowled at the assembled crowd. His jaw hit the floor on spotting the very annoyed-looking Marcus, who, at this point, looked so very done. By the gods! It's true! An actual human, he exclaimed with shock. Yeah, blah blah friggin' blah! Look, dude, I'ma make something simple, Marcus said, and got right up in the king's face. The elf girl will explain everything, show you how shit works. Please, can you just get in, sit down, and I can show you what's going on. Now please. For the love of God, get in, I want to go home. Marcus bellowed angrily and pointed towards the rear hatch. Taken by surprise, the royal sheepishly nodded and walked into the back, taking a seat. A palace guard, Saris and Thorn likewise entered, and Jacqueline appeared too, getting a seat before Marcus could object. He just sighed and strapped her into her seat. What are you doing here? The king said, addressing Jacqueline. So pretty. I'm not missing this, she replied with a sly smirk. Damn mountain elves and their machines. He rolled his eyes. Damn wood elves and their lack of machines, she replied, cheekily sticking her tongue out. Marcus raised a brow and winked. She's nice. Feisty, he said and left, closing the door behind him. Marcus returned to his cockpit. His voice was straining. He was obviously becoming more stressed. Mic check, can everyone hear me? Yes, came the response. Lifting off. Man, was I cruel to puppies in a previous life to deserve this or something, I swear to God, he offhandedly said as the gunship lifted off the ground. Why are you so aggressive? The king asked. Because my bro, by staying here longer than I need to, I've broken no fewer than 32 articles of convention, 12 international rights laws, and 17 laws of the First Contact Protocol Amendment. To add insult to injury, the amount of paperwork I'm going to have to file because I was lied to, I'm going to be stuck in an office filing paperwork for the next 6 months while trying to avoid a prison sentence. That's fucking why, Marcus replied. The king simply bowed his head and remained silent. Part 4. Hundreds of miles, a journey normally taking several weeks, passed by in the span of just under an hour. Saris sat in her seat, barely able to contain herself as she carefully explained a basic account of what was going on. The king sat in his seat with his jaw on the floor. Jacqueline had a look of shock and excitement on her face at the prospect of more of this kind of machinery. Thorn was just speechless at this point, and half beamed with pride as he looked over his homeland from the air. Jacqueline was more than just a bit giddy as they flew over the world, having only small wooden contraptions that could only manage a few 100 feet above the ground at best, and barely above 80 miles an hour in speed. Saris was getting a bit flustered now, the excitement wearing off as she now realized she was in the presence of her king. All right, here we are. Gonna land on the ship this time. We need to have lunch before we continue. I'm friggin' starving, Marcus said through their headsets. The cabin tilted sharply, and everyone on board groaned as the force of the movement caught them off guard. The gunship maneuvered with speed and expertise, Marcus's rage fueling his piloting skills as he landed on the same little platform he took off from barely a few hours ago. A loud clunk signaled they were connected, and the engines spooled down, the cabin becoming eerily quiet. The platform swiveled inside the hangar bay, and the rear door finally opened up. All right, out. Follow me inside, please, Marcus said and hopped out of the cockpit. The king gingerly left his seat, uncomfortable with the fact he was standing at the hangar's door. The green grass below him was nearly a half-mile straight down, and it gave him a shiver. Saris walked out and gave her father a hug. Jacqueline could barely contain her excitement as she rushed out and looked around at the machinery and complex electronics surrounding her. She was visibly attempting not to squee at the sight of larger and more heavily armed aircraft surrounding her. Marcus cleared his throat and gestured for them to follow him as fast as possible. He looked at them glaringly just before they entered the large door in the center of the hangar. Pay attention. Do not touch anything. I have this entire ship perfectly calibrated. I'd rather not have to also spend a month in maintenance after all this, too. Follow closely. This means you, Jacqueline, he said, narrowing his eyes at the mountain elf. A heavy, unnatural male voice suddenly sounded. Welcome aboard, Captain. All systems online. Ship maintenance protocol completed. Thank you, Arcturus. Can you set up the canteen, please? Lunch for 5, Marcus replied cheerfully. Affirmative. Today's lunch is cheeseburger with fries and a Coke, no pickle. Detecting unidentified humanoid life form, the voice said again. Yes, Arcturus, those are my guests. Set up a void link and contact the Council and the Admiralty. I will be alone after lunch, Marcus said, his voice seemingly stressed. Aye, Captain. Establishing first contact protocol operations, reconfiguring emergency beacon. Complete. At your order, the voice spoke again. Thank you, Arc. All right, follow me, please. Marcus moved forward and pushed a button. A large opening in the wall appeared in front of them, the walls sliding open. The party was suddenly overcome by the blissful scent of a redwood forest, flowers and lavender scenting as the main corridor opened up. The corridor was beautifully decorated with various statues of mythical beasts and hanging potted plants, chief among them roses and lavender. The sterile floors and walls of the hangar bay were a stark contrast to the beautiful miniature forest deep inside the ship. Sharp corners were covered by plates made of redwood. Potted plants hung from the ceiling and small statues sat proudly on shelves. The corridor was short and small. 3 doors on the left, 2 doors on the right, 1 door leading to an upstairs staircase in front. This was not what I was expecting, Thorn said as he breathed in the fresh, scented air. This ship is my home. I'm stuck in this tin can for years, sometimes decades on end, alone in the cold void. I have to maintain my sanity somehow, don't I? Marcus said with a sly smirk, and moved the group toward the second door on the left. He waved them in. They all gasped at the quality. Titanium kitchenware, handmade silverware, professional stainless steel cooking utensils, everything. Even an automated chef bot hanging from the ceiling. Mahogany chairs, tables, and pure marble countertops, all within a circular dining room surrounding a small chocolate fountain. Good afternoon, sir. Oh, my guests. Same order for everyone? The robotic chef said. his faceplate displaying a range of digital emotions on an LED screen. "Same order, Cookie. Thanks again," Marcus said, showing everyone to a table. "You seem very stressed, sir. Is everything all right?" the robot said as its 6 independent limbs began moving at ridiculous speed, the smell of cooking food filling the air. "That's an understatement. Stressed doesn't even come close," Marcus replied as he sat down. Moments before anyone could say anything, the food was cooked and delivered. Jacqueline was still unable to contain herself and let out a delighted squeak of excitement with each new piece of tech she looked at, following the railing the robot was mounted on. "Here you go. Texas grill hamburger with cheddar cheese, no pickle, barbecue sauce, and a side of fries. Can of Coke all round?" the bot excitedly said and returned to its station to start cleaning up. "Best purchase I ever made," Marcus said to himself as he picked up his burger, taking a deep, long bite. "Ooh-ho! That's the stuff!" Everyone followed Marcus's example, and upon sinking their teeth into the burger, their hearts and minds melted. The king almost went to tears at the taste of the sauce, just enough spice and just enough sweet. Sarah squealed in delight on the sight of meat and began scarfing it down like a hungry pig. Thorne, having had no real meat for several years beyond some carefully saved preserves, savored every last morsel of the precious food. Jacqueline carefully dissected each and every component of her meal, taking individual bites of each part and testing the fries with the sauce. The group slowly and methodically ate one of the finest meals they ever had. "Oh, this food is fit for royalty. Meat is such a rare commodity these days," the king said. "Oh, my name is Taurus Vicaris, king of the Barkwood." "Nice to meet you." "And why is meat rare then?" Marcus asked. "It's just expensive these days. Cattle are becoming rarer, and people just prefer hunting wild game. A certain vegetable we grow has all the nutrients and things we seem to need, so we just farm it instead. A bad idea, in hindsight." Taurus said calmly. Thought it was worse than that. "Anyway, the meat here is entirely synthetically produced. No cattle, just machines," Marcus said. The group looked at him, staring with shock. "Wait, what?" Cookie the chef bot appeared and explained. There was a mass food crisis several centuries ago. To resolve it, much of human food production shifted to synthetic production. Organic material goes in, is reconstructed at a nutritional level, then reassembled as the desired product. The technology has progressed to the point where real food is completely indistinguishable at any level from synthetic food. In short, steak is still steak, no matter where it came from, Cookie said as he cleaned up the party's empty plates. "Yeah, farms still have to produce food, of course, but it works. In any case, that's for later," Marcus said and stood up. "Please follow me to the bridge. I need you there." The group followed and made their way upstairs, keeping close to him. They quickly arrived at the bridge, once again, a sterile and quiet environment, marked only by a wide-open space with innumerable screens and consoles saturating every surface. Marcus went to the center of the room and sat in the captain's chair. Sarah saw a detail on the chair, a strange spike, similar to the one inside the cockpit of the spider crab machine. "All right, give me a minute," Marcus said as the spike slipped into his neck. Marcus's voice changed completely. It became darker, deeper, mechanical, and unnatural, as if a dozen people were talking at once. "By the light of the void, I see the path. By the power of the machine, I carve my way. By the fruits of Gaia, I take my steps. But it is through my will alone that I set the world in motion." Marcus went limp. A dozen mechanical, unnatural machine voices spoke simultaneously in 100 different languages and dialects. For a solid minute, Marcus simply remained silent and still. Marcus then suddenly sat up, and the spike went out of his neck as if nothing happened. He stood up and stretched out. "Okay, then. That was a lot less painful than expected, and a lot more jubilant, shall we say, than I was predicting," he said. What the fuck was that?" Taurus said, making Saris and Jacqueline gasp at his foul language. "Oh, right, sorry. Interstellar communication tech. Chant of the Messiah. It's part of my own religious thing. I'm not going into that now. Anyway, the gist of the situation is that my bosses are fully aware of what's going on, and I am being sent an emissary from the Admiralty Board, the Terran Federation, and the Philly Vacua. And also, another ship will be entering the system tomorrow morning to help me out," he replied with a smile. Taurus could only blink in surprise. Well, that was easy. So, now what? Well, I am authorized to shift factory production to assist in any issue you may have. But I want to make something perfectly clear. If I help your kingdom, I have to help others too. If I give you weapons, I gotta give everybody else weapons. I give you food, I give everybody else food. Nobody gets any special treatment. Understand? Marcus said. Absolutely. That's fair. The king replied, stern and formal. But I can't give you tech. You have to go to the stars under your own power, with your own strength. You have to go it alone, and we'll keep you safe until then, no matter how long it takes. We will not interfere with interpersonal politics and your own squabbles. But in case of catastrophe or disaster, we will be there to help. I'm allowed to give you a boost or short-term assistance, but you have to go it on your own from there. For as the chant states, by the machine I gain the strength, by the void I gain the path, by the fruits of Gaia I gain the energy, but by my will alone I set the world in motion. Taurus stood in thought for a moment. So, if I understand, you will give us what we need to start, but it will be up to us to actually do anything with it, he said. Pretty much. Basic stuff like electrical theory, logistics, engineering. Well, start you up on an industrial revolution, and you can figure out what to do from there. Looks like from the mountain elves you already have a basis to jumpstart, so I'm guessing that's your first port of call, Marcus replied. Taurus looked at Jacqueline and smiled in a sly and uncomfortable manner. Part 5? Marcus looked at Taurus and smiled wryly. So, who else am I going to get into this little party? What kings or queens must I host in my humble abode? Right. I forgot about that. Let's see. King Edward VI of the Mountain Elves to the far east. There's King Valerian of the Snow Elves, Taurus replied. Okay, so how do I get all of them in one place without violence? Marcus asked, typing at a console. We have several rights I can use to call a moot. It's reserved for catastrophes or emergencies and such. I think this qualifies. If I do use the right, it will take about 2 weeks for everyone to arrive, Taurus explained with the calm demeanor of a ruler. Too slow. Reinforcements will be here in 2 days. The delegation will be here in 4. Any way we can speed this up? Marcus asked as he looked at his console. Taurus and Thorn looked at each other and pointed at the small frigate nearby. We can use those to collect the leaders for the moot, after which we can have our moot, figure out what to do and go from there, Taurus said. My village is closest, we can host everyone needed, Thorn said, receiving a squeak of excitement from Saris. Works for me, Marcus said. Now since you're here, let's get started. Let's see what the factory needs to be doing instead of weapons production. Excuse me? Taurus said in shock. The room suddenly darkened and a holographic view of the planet appeared. This was the first time that anyone had ever seen the world in its entirety, and all the Eves couldn't help but beam with pride as their home flashed in front of them. Okay, so, Saris's village is there? Marcus said, putting a bright pin on the location of Eris's village on the world. The image zoomed in, allowing views to such an extent one could see the tiles on roofs. And the palace is there, 15 miles away. There's 6 more villages in the vicinity and some kind of wall structure near a huge canyon. Breakridge, home of the Canyon Elves. I forgot about them. Yeah, we need to talk to them too, Taurus said. Okay, this moot thing. How many kingdoms and subsects do you people have here? Marcus asked, frustrated yet again. It's been a while since we needed to care to know. Since humans went extinct, we kind of stopped caring about our other kin. Since then we have fractured, dissipated, and walked away, settling other lands and creating new families. We don't need to worry, though. The moot is a specialized spell that caters only to leadership. Once I cast the rite, all of them will be around, Taurus replied. Well, at least you got that going for you. Let's see. Here we are. Behold the factory, Marcus said, scrolling through the hologram. The image shocked the entire group to no end. What they saw around them was but a minuscule fraction of the factory's total size, with the entire thing covering the whole continent. But Saris, ever conscious about her tree friends, had a question. What are those small forests? And what are those huge buildings in them? Saris asked, pointing to patches of green among the ocean of steel. Air purifiers. The factory produces a few toxins during the manufacturing process and refining process, as all industry does. In order to ensure I don't turn the entire planet into a smog-covered garbage patch, I had to make sure to keep the pollution in check. Turns out your trees and forests really like my air purifiers, so they grow around them like weeds, Marcus replied. Oh wow, Sarah said with a big smile. Marcus simply raised an eyebrow and tried to ignore the suddenly flirty elf and continued scrolling. Right. Here's the oil refinery. Here's the coring mine. That will be shut down, though. Here's the surface mines for iron, copper, coal, stone, and a few others like aluminum and zinc. Here's one you will like, a gold mine. And here's the main rail yard for logistics operations, among other things. Questions? He said, pointing out all of the points of interest. How long have you been here? Jacqueline asked. About 8 months if you count the initial startup. This is nothing, though. I know engineers who can speedrun this shit and can build factories 4 times this size in less than 2 weeks, Marcus said. Everyone gasped in sheer terror. Oh yeah, I'm familiar with this part. Ahem, Marcus said, clearing his throat loudly. No, we don't strip mine planets or entire star systems. No, all production is based exclusively on being environmentally friendly, hence the air purifiers. No, we aren't allowed to interfere with local populations or build factories or anything on populated planets. That is, in fact, illegal. I've done this before, Marcus replied proudly, displaying his factory. The elves simply looked at him with shock, silent for several minutes. In any case, come, mine kingliness, what exactly do you need? The factory is ready for reconstruction, and I have new tech available. Start talking, Marcus said. Taurus snapped himself out of his shock and stood thinking for a bit. Let me think. Biggest concerns we have are, stuff that you can solve, I think, food stores. We had a bad winter and some of our food storage was damaged due to avalanches and landslides. Poor planning on our part. We can weather the storm. Not necessarily comfortably, but I'd rather not worry about it. Think you can fix that? I was not informed we had food store issues, my lord, Thorn said with concern. I didn't want to concern everyone, especially with the Harvest Festival coming. I was going to say that after the festival, we had just a bit too much fun and start rationing supplies until the next harvest. Parley with the Canyon Elves for their stores and maybe use that as an excuse to get a bit closer with our cousins. 2 birds, 1 stone, as the phrase goes. The king replied with a sly smile. Smart. Ultimately unnecessary. Let's see where that BP database at. Ah, here it is. Farming complex with greenhouses and growth accelerators. Gonna also need the waste management plants, water purifiers, and a few others, and... Done, Marcus said. Done. Just like that, Jacqueline said. Just like that. Gonna be a day or 2 to get production actually going at a steady pace until I can rebuild the logistics network. By the end of the week, we should have... Let me calculate this. 2 tons of nutrient blocks, 3 tons of ration packs, and half a ton of synth meat. Marcus started to talk while typing. Doesn't seem much, my lord. We will have to... Now I can remove the entire drone manufacturing network and weapons production, and I can add in another 15 production complexes to that. And total production is about 60 tons per hour. You don't need to worry about food for a very long time. Still, my food is probably not as good as the local stuff for obvious reasons, so I'd recommend using my stuff as a supplement to the diet, and not as a staple. It's cheap and used for emergencies, not as a base diet. My best recommendation is to use it in stews and soups, Marcus said. He moved over to the wall unit and acquired 3 items, handing them over to the king. One was a slab of meat steak wrapped in plastic film. One was a small thumb-sized cube, and the third was a paper-like box with the word rations printed on it. Best used all together or supplemented with other items like fresh veggies and fruits, especially soups and stews and the like. The nutrient cubes are tasteless and can last in storage untouched for centuries, but contain everything you need to survive. The ration packs are single full meals designed for military servicemen to survive in dangerous environments without compromising the food. The meat is entirely synthetic and packed with proteins and minerals for nutrition. But still, the stuff Mother Nature makes is best for everyone one way or another, Marcus said with a smile. Thorn. Yes, Your Majesty? Thorn replied, standing to attention. Prepare an edict for the kingdom. Make sure they know what this stuff is. This will fix so many problems. but I shall need a favor from you, Marcus. I shall owe you for this one. Big time, Taurus said, looking at Marcus with seriousness in his voice. Sure, I'll cash in on that favor eventually, Marcus replied with a chuckle. You mine things. If gold and silver are on the list of things you mine, I would like some of it. He half-asked, half-begged. Sure. Will 60 tons suffice for now? Marcus replied in kind. The group gasped in shock again. This time, Saris and Jacqueline both fainted at the mention of so much damn gold. Marcus smiled and chuckled in a most sadistic fashion as he brought up a video feed of his ship's cargo hold, showing a picture of pallets of ingots 2 stories high packed neatly on shelves. Iron, steel, copper, zinc, platinum, even bars of plastic and silicon stacked neatly in a warehouse secured with straps and bars for travel. The camera panned over the stacks, showing 2 separate sections for gold and silver. The silver pile was twice the size of the gold pile, ingots the size of a grown man's arm, 4 pallets per stack, 2 stories high. Thorn passed out in shock and the king began to hyperventilate at the sight of so much wealth. You give us this for nothing? Oh gods, the king gasped. Not for nothing, you owe me a favor after all, but yeah. Help thyself, sir. 280 tons of gold bullion, 640 tons of silver bullion. Frankly, to me, it's almost worthless. Copper and iron are my gold and silver. These are used for some minor advanced circuitry, but it's not that useful to me. Again, help thyself, Marcus said. The king hyperventilated a bit more, then passed out alongside Thorn, making a noise like a mouse being stepped on as he hit the floor. Marcus laughed loudly and sat on a nearby chair, resuming his factory building. Why is that so funny? Just show them tons of gold and silver and they collapse. It's hilarious. Just like when we went to that planet where civilization was like the 1930s. Open a cargo hold full of gold and it's like Ermagerd. Squeak! Dunk! It never stops being funny. Marcus sat quietly at his console for the next 2 hours, occasionally looking at the group of passed-out elves and chuckling to himself. After a bit of fiddling, Marcus had completely rebuilt the entire factory. It was now producing tons of food, ingots, and parts for future use, storing it all in massive warehouses. By the time the king started waking up, the warehouses storing gold and silver had tripled their total amounts. Oh, my aching head, Taurus said as he started getting up off the floor. Welcome back to the land of the living. Did you enjoy your cold linoleum floor? Marcus said with a hearty chuckle. Absolute bastard! You enjoyed doing that, didn't you? He said and cradled his aching head. Well, I have to have my fun somehow, don't I? Anyway, the factory was rebuilt. Have everything set for new projects and stuff. Pretty much ready to go. On your order, Marcus replied and moved towards Thorn, patting his face to wake him up. 60 tons. 60! The king yelled to himself as he sat down on a nearby chair. 684 actually since you passed out, but that's pretty much all I can get for now. Gonna have to make do, Marcus replied with a sadistic grin. Ah! Was all the king could say, his yell reminiscent of a certain meme. His loud vocalization woke Saris and Jacqueline up, and the two hastily stumbled to their feet as Thorn snapped out of his own astonished stupor. I only need a few coins to pay off some debts. 5 kilograms at maximum. You offer me 60 tons? I will never be able to pay back this favor. This is too much! Too much! He yelled out in frustration. Not really. Remember what I said? If I give it to you, I also gotta give it to everybody else. So, technically I'm doing everyone a favor. Not just you. Equal treatment. That also means the food supplies go to them too. Everyone gets their fair share. If anybody says give to me but not them, nobody gets anything at all. Simple, Marcus said, handing the king a glass of water. You don't understand this world's economy. A family of 10 can live comfortably for 20 years on little more than 50 gold coins. You're willing to give us the equivalent of millions of sovereigns for a favor? Taurus said with a furrowed brow. Oh, my aching head. Well, that's excellent then. To me, gold and silver are practically useless. So, help thyself, as I said. My ships, well, you saw how big the factory is. This ship? It's all from 5 ingredients. Iron ore, copper ore, coal, stone, and a little piece of asteroid rock known as hexalon, all of which are absurdly abundant in the universe. Gold and silver? Generally byproducts of mining the other 5. All of that is put into a complex chain of manufacturing, alloying and purifying and turned into what's needed. Marcus replied with a chuckle and returned to the console to keep working. By this point, Thorn was tending to the two girls who had bruises from their landing on the floor by using his healing magic. The two were still a bit dizzy from the excitement, and Thorn approached. "I need a lift back to my village, and the king must get started with his duties. We have to cut this short, but thank you for what you've already done," Thorn said and bowed his head. "No problem, anytime. Just let me know if you need anything. Cures for diseases, food stores, metal ingots, anything. Just remember, if one of you gets it, everyone does too," Marcus replied with a smile, and headed towards the hangar bay. "What about the maidens?" the king asked. "Leave them there for now. They are still a bit shocked. I'll bring my daughter back for supper later. First port of call is the mountain elves. I shall lead the way. I shall need to make a landing pad of sorts for that whirly bird machine you have," Thorn said, thinking. "No need for that. I put that away hours ago. Come on, I'll show you the Whitehall-class frigate. Should be to your royal standards at least. Have to make our guests and their retinue feel cozy. And look, there's your guardsman, your majesty. Guy's been here the whole time receiving messages from those birds." "Yo! Buddy, you going home? Get moving," Marcus yelled out at the king's paladin that had been standing vigilant at the hangar door all this time. Forgot about you. Sorry about that. You missed lunch, man. Must be hungry. Here, have a protein bar," Marcus said and handed the soldier a bar of chocolate. The paladin looked at the king quizzically, asking wordlessly for permission to eat. The king simply nodded in response and waited for Marcus to work. He pressed a series of buttons on a console and loud mechanical clanging and whirring followed as a large sailing ship-sized machine was brought to the front of the hangar. This one was very different from any other Marcus had. Sleek, sexy design with sharp edges and smooth contours, painted a glossy blue and white with gold and silver trimmings and details. The Whitehall-class diplomatic frigate, tailor-made for use as a transport or neutral meeting ground for dignitaries and officers. 200 meters in length, displacing 11,000 tons. Room for 200 people in comfort. Please come aboard, Marcus said with glee and waved everyone inside. Part 6. The interior of the frigate was a far cry from everything around them thus far. From the mildly mauve-colored metals of the factory structures to the strangely calming wood and metal-themed interior of the large starship. Now this. One massive culture shock after the other. Gold and silver lining the hallways, high-quality leather seats, plasteel tiling and high-grade laminated wood floors, windows that allowed them to see basically anything outside. The ship itself was relatively small considering its parent craft, but this thing was so beautifully spacious, it was able to hold a crew of over 200 souls in comfort. As they entered, they noticed the bar, fully stocked with any drink imaginable, a kitchen with a robotic tender and a small armory, stocked to the gills with some seriously vicious-looking weaponry. Thorn smiled happily as he saw the arboretum, a small but beautiful sanctuary of greenery in a circular room surrounding a carefully tended bonsai tree. Both men noted the pantry and crew quarters, with the majority of facilities being worthy of royalty. Taurus noted the diplomatic quarters, and had a bout of royal snobbishness when he noted they were of higher quality than his own royal chambers. Marcus headed towards the cockpit and plugged himself into the ship. "Okay then, find yourself a seat." "Your Majesty, you're in the cockpit with me. I need a navigator." "Thorn, are you going back to your village or going with the king?" "I shall return to my village. We have many preparations to consider," he responded. "Then to the village it is. After that we pay the canyon elves a visit. Oh, and just in case, I have loaded the cargo hold with small 300-gram ingots, about 200 kilos worth. That should be enough in case we need to, what's an eloquent way to state this? Bribe people," Marcus said, and the ship shuddered as its engines jolted to life. 200 kilos! Thorn said in despair. "Dude, relax," Marcus said. "Why do you not need gold?" Thorn asked. "Hexalon, carbolite, and titanium. We don't need gold or silver because we have hexalon, which is a superconductor of unrivaled quality. We have carbolite, which is an alloy of titanium, chrome, and steel, which is used for everything from ship hulls to toasters. We don't need gold or silver because we have better," Marcus explained calmly before the ship left the platform. "Oh, okay. Well, that answered my question, didn't it?" You really think I'm dumb enough to give a medieval society, even one that uses magic, enough gold and silver supply to shatter their economy 100 times over? Police, Marcus replied with a chuckle. The ship went silent for a few minutes as Marcus made the ship ready for atmospheric travel and modified the engines to handle the slightly lesser gravity of the planet. So what do you plan to do then? Taurus asked. Give you enough gold and silver to cover your debts and clear your consciences. Then provide you with enough gold and silver to give every citizen a small stipend to do what they wish, jump-starting your economy. After that, well, that's your problem. Technically, all the gold and silver I've mined thus far is yours anyway. We just have to be careful what we do with it, Marcus said as the ship slowly exited the hangar bay. Wait, what? What do you mean it's ours anyway? Taurus said with surprise. You are the owners of this planet. The law states that all resources belong to any local sapience if acquired by any pilot or crew. You are the local sapience, which means that minus the resources I have already used, everything else belongs to you, because this is your planet. Therefore, your resources, Marcus said. Well, shit, Thorn replied as he strapped himself in his seat. It's just I have so much I would do more harm than good. It's better to just do it slowly and steady. Give you incentive, you know? So once you point me where I need to go, I will go there. Use the travel time to figure out what to do with all your newly acquired wealth, Marcus said with a smirk. Thorn and Taurus went silent for a few minutes as the ship's engines spooled up and the ship started to move. Taurus started talking to himself as they moved along, mumbling things to himself and scratching his chin. When they arrived at the capital city, Marcus landed on the outskirts of the city walls. Guards immediately went to their stations and surrounded the landing platform. The king and his paladin headed to the exit, still in deep thought. A set of stairs appeared out of the side of the ship underneath the airlock, and the party made their way out onto the ground. The king had a stern, thoughtful expression the entire time, his left hand idly rubbing his chin. Wordlessly, he waved his hands ordering his men to calm down and return to their stations and, still in silence, headed to the palace. The streets were eerily calm, peasantry and nobility quietly bowing in respect as he passed, receiving a silent nod in return. Taurus walked up the stairs to the palace, and just before entering he stopped. He spun around and looked at his kingdom, his subjects confused and curious as the massive fancy ship loomed over the city walls in the background. He could clearly see Marcus staring at him through the glass of the cockpit. He lifted his hands and waved them around in a specific pattern. A swirl of magical energy surrounded him for a few seconds, and then stayed still. He took a deep, long breath and began to speak, the spell he just cast making his voice boom over his entire kingdom. People of the Barkwoods, I am your king, Taurus Vacaris V. Hear me now, for I shall not repeat myself. He bellowed, his voice carrying on the magical energy of the air. As a few of you already know and are likely already gossiping about, humanity has returned, and have revealed many things to us. That, however, is something to be discussed at a later date. For now we have more pressing and frankly more interesting concerns, he said. The assembled crowd and many peasants over hundreds of miles quietly chatted to each other. First of all, the human that is currently in our world has, well, let's just say he's done a bit of work, and in accordance with his own rules, is supplying us with some much-needed funds to help cement relations with us and the rest of mankind. An offer I have gleefully accepted. As a consequence, I would like to give everyone some very good news. Starting as of next week, Meritus, all taxation for lords, ladies, and the common man from the lowest to the highest is suspended until further notice, he said. The resulting cheer from all the citizens could be heard for hundreds of miles beyond the borders of the kingdom. Families that desperately and carefully managed their household coin purses breathed a collective sigh of relief and joy. Yes, that's good. Calm now. I have yet to begin, the king said, allowing the jubilant roar to mellow. This is not just for the sake of new resources. No, we may have an abundance and a bright, beautiful future ahead of us, but this is no reason to rest on our laurels. A new revolution is coming, one that, if not openly embraced and acted upon, will mean our extinction, either in the next few decades or even in the next 1,000 years. Soft murmurs and a quiet lull of rumor began to spread. However, I am told by a reliable source we do have an upper hand in the coming centuries. Humanity, though they outnumber, outclass, and outgun us 1,000,000 to 1, still do not have as much a grasp on the arcane arts as we do. In fact, they have almost forgotten the art. I know many people would disagree with me, but I say we have a duty to teach it to them again. I have seen what they do with simple technology, simple science, same as the mountain elves. I salivate at the thought of what they can accomplish with magic at their side. A murmur of dissent followed. I hear those mutterings. I believe I am making the correct choice in this matter. Any who refuse that mandate, I shall have your head. The mutterings stopped, followed by a shocked, terrified silence. The king had never done this before. Threats and possibility of executions. These things were unheard of for hundreds of years. A few in the crowd carefully considered the king's words, then looked at the giant ship outside the castle gates, having a quiet moment of introspection. However, these are things for another time. That aspect is far in our future. For now I have news. Food supply issues are resolved. Our debts to the other kingdoms will soon be fully paid as well. The coming tax break will help alleviate everyone's nerves. I shall, however, put the following into place. Effective immediately, all families shall be encouraged to expand as much as they like. In fact, I'd like to mandate that you start expanding these families as much as you can tolerate, the king said, getting a sneaky whistle and slight murmur from the crowd. I will be making some deals with our new human allies to keep us supplied with the food and resources we need to maintain this expansion. But I dare say it shall be a moot point, as by the time we get to where we need to care, we will be more than self-sufficient and will have paid our debt to them tenfold, in more ways than they can imagine, I bet, the king said. This statement made Marcus visibly raise an eyebrow as he sat in the cockpit. I shall be making a new mandate that each newly minted family shall receive a stipend of 25 silver per child per year until the child is 5 years old. Furthermore, with our new need to expand, I have come to an easy decision. All citizens of our great Barkwood kingdom shall receive a small gift of 50 silver coins per person. Each soldier, warrior, and guild adventurer shall get 1 gold coin. Nobility will have their share in due time with some well-placed investments, he said. The crowd jubilantly erupted yet again. The king stopped them quickly, raising his voice to calm the din. This is not for you to spend as you want, however. This is an investment. Use this money to improve your life. Experiment with magic. Get better farming equipment. Fix the roof of your house. Do things that are actually important. Things that help better your situation. Do not squander this. I shall be making our guardsmen wary and minting a special coin to ensure this gift is not wasted on ale or... He spat at the ground. Tasuk. The crowd roared in approval at this statement, likewise spitting at the ground at the mention of a hard drug made from a rare weed. It shall take some time to gather everything needed to put this plan into action, so exercise care for the next few days. Now, my people, go forth! Prosper! Multiply! Together to the future, the king yelled, casting a spell as he did. The crowd yelled and began to cheer in celebration as blasts of magic rocketed into the sky, sending a mass broadcast to all the leadership on the planet. The king smiled, nodded, and gave Marcus a sly wink as he entered his palace. Cheeky bastard. Well, guess I'm in it now, Marcus said to himself as he settled in for a wait. Arcturus, check the security feed. What are the 2 ladies up to? Marcus said, talking to his computer AI. They are engaged with the washroom commander. The one named Saris is washing up, and the one called Jacqueline is reading a book after a dip in the tub. Ah, they haven't been poking into the machines, have they? Marcus asked. No, sir. They just went into the washroom and have been there since. They enjoy the hot tub the most, apparently. Arcturus responded with a chuckle. Arc, respect their privacy. If your system recorded any data from those 2, I want it deleted, Marcus said. Already done, sir. Just make sure that Saris and Jackie don't do anything too untoward, Marcus said, scratching his chin. As you wish. Marcus sat quietly in his cockpit for a few more minutes and shrugged, standing up. Welp, might as well go downstairs and ready the cargo hold. Marcus left the ship, heading down the stairs with a smile, making the assembled crowd gasp at his presence. He got to the ground, pressed some buttons, and chuckled as a panel on the side of the ship opened, then quickly lowered itself to the ground. A flat platform the size of a house now sits flat on the ground, ready for cargo. Marcus smiles at the assembled crowd of medieval peasantry and patiently waits for the king to return. Marcus looked at the crowd, and once again made a note in his head at the sight of the women in the crowd. A full hour after the king left, Thorn had already commandeered a horse and was halfway back to his home village. The king himself, along with a retinue of 10 of the most important people he could think of, finally made their way towards the ship. 5 paladins, the king himself, a head mage, the queen, his finance minister, and 2 retainers, along with a carriage of goods, presumably the minimum required for their stay on board the frigate. The group hastily made their way through and loaded the carriage of goods onto the lift. Marcus, ever the sneaky boy, decided this was the perfect time to present his wealth, and a drone appeared at his command, carrying a pallet of 25 kilos of small ingots of varying sizes of both gold and silver. The assembled crowd gasped audibly at the sight of so much wealth. A few extra guardsmen hurried over to protect the precious cargo and loaded onto the carriage to be sent to the mint. Marcus simply smiled as the finance minister gawked at the treasure loaded onto the carriage and barely stuttered a coherent, "Thank you," before hastily ordering it to be taken to the mint. Marcus waved his hands, allowing his guests to enter the ship to the jubilant applause of the assembled crowd before entering the ship himself. The retinue was nothing short of flabbergasted at the sight of the ship's interior, the sheer finery leaving them breathless. "One thing about diplomatic ships," Marcus idly said as he escorted the party to their quarters, "is that all of these Whitehall-class? They're all handcrafted, save for important stuff like the reactor and hull. Most of this all handmade," Marcus said, clearly enjoying himself as he patted the wall. "Indeed," the king said, carefully taking a moment to admire the craftsmanship. The queen came alongside him and lustily bit her lower lip, giving him a gentle peck. Marcus cleared his throat loudly. "There will be time for hanky-panky later. Let's get started." "Indeed. Oh, sorry. Yes, let's get started," the king said as he directed his queen to the arboretum so she could soak up the atmosphere. "Firstly, we proceed to the Canyon Elves' kingdom, the Gap, as they call it locally. It's a delightful place, famed for its magistone mines and silver deposits. We have a good relationship with them diplomatically. Repaying our debts to them will better the situation." Taurus walked with Marcus towards the cockpit and let Marcus get into his seat. "How big is this canyon exactly? Am I going to be hovering mid-air with some ropes, or is this going to be easy?" "The canyon is 3 miles deep and a half-mile wide with nearly a 50-mile distance from end to end. You'll be fine. Most of the elves there make their cities by carving their homes out of the bare rock. You should see the craftsmanship. It's magnificent," Taurus said with a proud smile. "Well, looking forward to it. Right then, plasma on, thrusters on, proximity warnings on, and liftoff. It is right over that way, so I'll keep the engines hot. Oh, and for the sake of reference, we still have 175 kilos of gold and silver aboard," Marcus said. "Meep," he replied in kind. "That is the answer I was hoping for," Marcus said with an all-too-happy chuckle as the ship started to move. It was barely 15 minutes later when the massive frigate arrived above the canyon, carefully maneuvering through its depths. Marcus followed a large, beautifully carved staircase and lift system down the canyon wall, until eventually seeing a familiar sight, a mountain elf flying machine. "Well, shit, that's a blimp, that is. Ha! God, I love those! Bits sexier looking than the ones we had way back when, I can tell you that," Marcus said with glee. The blimp was an ovoid-shaped dirigible with various adornments such as fish-like fins and wooden propellers that moved it along. It was large, its crew of 15 people nearly crapping themselves at the sight of Marcus's warship, ducking behind cover or comically falling down stairs they forgot were there. The largest docking port for airships was nowhere near enough to house the warship, and Marcus had to maneuver around them. By this point, Taurus had directed Marcus to wait at a point and open the airlock so he could wave outside and order space to be made. A horn of some kind flared and sounded loudly on the dockmaster, seeing the sight of the king waving at them, using his magic to amplify his voice. A few frantic calls and loud bellows later, gears were churning and wheels were running, and a complex mechanism moved the docking points out to the point where Marcus's ship could move into position, deploying the boarding ramp. By this point, the royal retinue and a few dozen guards had gathered at the commotion. Marcus set his ship to auto and went to the airlock as well, his appearance gaining a gasp of shock from the crowd, as well as murmurs that the rumors of a human were true. "You must be enjoying yourself, Marcus. I can't wait until we have the chance to visit your home world. Earth, was it? Well, that's not possible. Earth is long gone, Marcus replied and walked down the ramp.
Everyone suddenly stopped. The jubilation of Marcus's appearance suddenly gone, replaced with a shocked, empty silence. One simple statement sending 1,000 people to silence. What? Taurus said, his face now awash with worry. Earth is gone. Gone long ago. The year of our Lord 2887 AD. Supernova came in, destroyed the system. Just boom. Swish, Marcus said, making various hand gestures as he casually walked towards the cargo ramp. Everyone looked at him like he just kicked a puppy or threw a kitten in a pot of boiling oil. He casually just started the cargo ramp, lowering it to show a stack of gold and silver, the exact amount given to Taurus earlier that day. With everyone's attention suddenly diverted by a fat stack of treasure, the subject suddenly vanished. And this is, the Canyon Elf King said as he gestured to the pallet of gold. It's part of the deal. What he gives to me, he also gives to you. And vice versa. It's all part of the deal. Come quickly, let's go inside. We have much to discuss and I have much to tell. Guards, take the pallet to the treasury. Taurus commanded to the palace guards. Taurus smiled as they all looked at him, shrugged and began carrying the treasure to the palace vaults. He stood aside and gestured for the Canyon King to lead the way to the Great Hall. Marcus, however, ignored it for now, raising, loading, then lowering the cargo ramp once more, this time packed with crates of food supplies. He yelled out for everyone to line up to grab a crate for their use, also handing out a pamphlet that explained what exactly was going on. The food distribution plan had already started. Taurus appeared from the palace doors about 20 minutes later and gestured for Marcus to follow him. Marcus, of course, shrugged and obliged, snapping his fingers. A large robot around twice the size of a cow appeared out of the side of the ship and clanged onto the stone ground. It had a bulbous, spherical body, out of which were a number of large, vicious-looking metal tentacles like a massive robotic squid. Its face had a screen on it, which displayed various emoticons and silly pictures to convey emotion, around which were large blue eyes made of a strange glass. It flew effortlessly through the air and landed by the cargo platform. It picked up a pallet and a pamphlet and handed it to the nearest person, displaying a happy face on its screen. It moved with precision and speed that made everyone shudder, and its scarlet-red paint job didn't make it any better. Marcus looked at it and loudly cleared his throat at it. It looked at him, then itself, then made an oopsie squeaky noise and began to vibrate for a few seconds. Then, in front of everyone, its outer coat of paint quickly changed color to a cheerful, cute Hello Kitty pink, logos included. It resumed doing its work. Marcus smiled, looking at Taurus, who was now staring. I'll tell you later. Trust me later. I'll hold you to that. Anyway, Council wishes to see you. Taurus replied and walked in. The two walked in and waited, the Council looking at Marcus with awe. Marcus, however, remained undaunted and simply approached with a smile. Sup? Well, Taurus, I wasn't expecting that. I knew you not to be a liar at all, but that was a bit far-fetched. So much for that theory. One of the elegantly robed elves at the table said. An actual human. This one seems a bit odd, though, another voice said. Taller than I remember, and what is that attire? Yet another voice said. Amongst the murmuring and chatter, Marcus simply stood quiet and let them gabble while he looked around. The entire room was a massive rectangular cathedral-like building with every edifice carved out of stone with hand tools and various magics. The floor polished to a mirror sheen. Every tile on the surface either carved out of the floor itself or expertly fitted in like a beautiful mosaic. A mixture of browns, whites, reds, blues, and greens, all creating a beautiful place to be. Marcus took some mental notes and used a hidden microcamera in his collar to take pictures for later. The Canyon Elf King stood up, the room going silent in response. I am King Edward II. Call me Ed. Everyone does. It makes things easier, simpler, faster. Marcus the engineer. Just Marcus. Pleasure. He replied in kind with a smile. Indeed. I saw your ship. Magnificent. Taurus has informed me of the basics of the situation. I'm certain I will need more time to get the full story, though. What can we do for you? Edward said, stoic and calm. Nothing, at least so far. Things are going as they need to. Reform, repay debts, get ready to be dragged kicking and screaming into the next millennium. Then, when you are ready on your own terms, join humanity in the void. Simple as, Marcus replied simply. Our own terms. Explain, please, he said, sitting back down. That's how it has to be. Let's say you go into space using our tech. Later down the line, it turns out our tech has a fatal flaw in its design. Well, you don't have a choice but to work around that flaw or deal with it as is because you have no alternative. If you do it by yourself, then you don't have that flaw. If Andor, when bad things happen, such as devouring hive swarms, stellar blowout cascades, mass supernovas, all sorts of stuff, we will have the edge to survive it, he said. The rest of the crowd raised a brow. Devouring hive swarm, stellar blowout cascade, mass supernovas. What? Why did all that sound terrifying? See, the universe is an ugly place. It's a dangerous place. The universe wants you dead, we don't know why. The only way for it not to do that is to make sure you are in more than one place when it happens. It's a numbers game. Bigger numbers means more survivability. The galaxy is big. Like really, really, really big. Even though the human empire is over 800 billion souls. Our empire, or at least claimed territories, covers barely 1/20 of the galaxy's total size. There's a lot out there we don't know, and we have first-hand knowledge that not everything out there is friendly, Marcus said, still smiling. Everyone in the room gave each other a passing glance of concern. But that stuff is farther down the line. Much farther. Say, 200 years farther down. You have a long way to go. But we will be welcoming you with open arms. No, seriously, hurry up, it's lonely out there. Marcus winked at the crowd with a smile and a chuckle. Edward took a deep breath. I have been told your factory is still functioning. I have a request. So make it. Since we have to do it our own way, so to speak, I would like to assign an apprentice to work alongside you. This apprentice will then learn these machines, and we can use that information to build our own. The ability to build large factories would be exceedingly useful. Is this acceptable? Ed said with a sly grin. Marcus, oblivious to the number of women in the audience whose faces suddenly brightened with joy, smiled and nodded. Yeah, all right, but education will have to wait for a while. I'm not the one in charge anymore. I need to wait for this moot thing and also for you to finish the whole talk to my boss's thing first. Then we can hand the apprentice over and get comfortable to start. What do you think, Taurus? Ed said. Taurus and Edward looked at each other with a sly grin that made Marcus genuinely nervous. Oh, I think I have a prime candidate. I have more to research on this pollution thing Marcus mentioned, but I would like to get my hands on those air purifier machines as soon as possible. Then it is settled. Marcus, I suggest taking an apprentice from each of the kingdoms, teach them a craft, then see if they can replicate it in their own unique way. I have a prime candidate for you. I will be sending over the royal delegation for the moot. Meeting adjourned. Edward used a small metal stick to hit a little bell on the table. The room erupted into a concerted effort of work and toil as everyone dispersed from their seats and hastily got back to their jobs. That was easy, Marcus said as Edward approached. I like things that are simple, quick, easy, straight to the point, direct. Flustering with bowing and scraping on floors with red carpets is a waste of time and resources. We prefer to save the pleasantries for when the job is done, Edward replied with a smile. Better keep that to yourself going forward. If the cult Mechanicus finds out an attitude like this exists outside Temple Prime, I may not be able to stop them, Marcus said with a fierce, stern tone, catching the two kings off guard. But anyway, for later again. We have more pressing concerns. I take it Taurus here explained what he was doing with his monetary compensation, Marcus asked as he headed back to his ship. Oh yes, a truly brilliant decision. Reduce taxes to spur the economy and growth. Give the people a reason to multiply prosperously. Extra coins in the hands of the common folk will eventually filter through the great chain. Everyone will be better off for it, and we grow in turn. We will eventually have the population we need to sustain a steady growth in this revolution of yours, Edward said, following Marcus closely. Well, there you go. Next thing to do is unite all the factions. Then we can start. And only then, Marcus said and walked up the stairs. The two kings looked at each other in concern. Huh, I knew it. Marcus chuckled to himself as he saw the two men's concerned "oh shit" stare and disappeared into his ship. Time flew by, and within the hour, all of the retinue were on board and were exploring the ship's incredible confines. Edward was beside himself, marveling at the craftsmanship around him, his guards likewise sharing his enthusiasm as they set their equipment in their quarters. One particular newcomer was more interested in Marcus and was sticking around him, much to his chagrin. "And you are?" he asked, raised brow and all. The young caramel-skinned elf with short, almost goblin-like ears just smiled at him. "My name is Ariana. I'm under orders. I was told you were my new master. I'm here to learn, sir," she said and saluted. Marcus closed his eyes and breathed deeply. His tone was frustrated and irritated. "Okay, firstly, please, for the love of God, don't call me master. Secondly, why are you naked? What's with all the naked elf girls?" "I'm not naked. What are you talking about?" she replied, batting her eyelashes at him. Seriously, you're wearing the equivalent of a microskirt and a tube top. That's not naked to you," Marcus said. "Well, no, This is common garb for us, especially during summer, she replied in kind. Arcturus, remind me to lower the ship's cabin temperature later, Marcus said with a glare as he got into his pilot's seat. Ariana obeyed her king's orders and stood next to him, standing over him. She carefully looked at all the ship's controls and operations, making every note in her head she could about every tiny detail she could find. Marcus growled in frustration as he noticed how Ariana's top barely covered anything, giving him a good look up her cleavage. What the hell is with the women on this fucking planet? I swear to the void. I mean seriously, Marcus said, speaking Japanese, a language she definitely didn't understand. She simply looked at him with a smile and resumed taking notes on the ship. The startup sequence hit, and several nearby observers nearly had the tar scared out of them as the ship's thrusters blasted to life with a beautiful roar that echoed through the entire canyon. Taurus and Edward both entered the cockpit as the ship cleared the canyon walls and entered the open sky. "So point me to where next?" Marcus said, still trying to keep his eyes off his new apprentice. "Our next port of call is the Mountain Elves. Jacqueline will be our representative. She seems to have made herself comfortable here," Taurus said. Marcus pushed a few buttons, and an image of Jacqueline wandering around the cargo bay messing with some spare parts appeared on a screen. "Yeah, no shit. Well, thankfully for both of us, it is a fortuitous occasion. The Southern Snow Elves are visiting. 2 for 1, Edward said. "Well, I guess that helps." "Arcturus," Marcus said. "Yes, Captain," the ship's AI voice spoke. "Activate the surveillance network and arm our cannons. If the Mountain Elves are anything like Jacqueline, I want security upgraded," Marcus said flatly. "Affirmative, sir." "What was that?" Edward asked, looking around for the source of the disembodied voice. "Courtesy of the cult Mechanicus and their affiliates at the Sons of the Void, Arcturus. A fully self-aware artificial intelligence. It's basically a machine that thinks, feels, and understands," Marcus replied simply. All 3 elves looked at each other, once again sharing glances of shock and awe. "Hello, my name is Arcturus. I am the ship's onboard AI. I am responsible for all shipboard and factory operations when the captain is not around. When he is around, we share the same mind. That's what that spike in his neck is for. It links us together during our work," Arcturus said. "Machines can think?" Taurus asked, scratching his chin. "Considering the circumstances, I will ignore the offensive connotations of that statement. Please don't press any buttons," Arcturus said, his mechanical voice seeming a bit angry. "Well then. Okay, I'm scared now." Edward shuddered a bit. "That is the correct answer. 1 hour, 20 minutes flight time. Coordinates locked, get comfy and enjoy the trip. Hope your quarters are acceptable," Marcus said as he gunned the engines. "Marcus, out of curiosity, what year is it for you? What's the date, so to speak?" Taurus asked, curious. 4186. Next year will be an interesting anniversary. 1,300 years since we lost Saul. It's going to be quite the pilgrimage." Marcus smiled and simply flew the ship. "Pilgrimage. Oh, right. Sorry, I forgot. It matters not to where we go, we never forget from whence we came. From the corpse of Saul to the end of the void, earth shall be remembered. Every year we hold a pilgrimage to Saul, or what's left of it, and newcomers or kids go to the star system and, gain a sense of perspective." Marcus shrugged. "From the shattered solar arrays of Venus, we learn to understand the need for energy. From the toxic remains of Mars, we understand why nature is so critical. From the body of Earth, we understand from whence we came and to where we all end. From the wreckage of Jupiter's moons, we understand the desperate struggle to belong. From the graveyards of Callisto, we remember why we have an inborn hatred of greed. From the prisons of Io, we remember why freedom is a master of no equal. From the foundries of Neptune, we remember why machines can think. From Saul, we learn these lessons. With Saul, we understand from Saul we came, to Saul we go, no matter where or when we are. And from these lessons, we learn how to rival gods in both power and responsibility." Marcus and all the machines on board the ship recited the same statement simultaneously. Jacqueline looked around her in confusion as the cargo bay echoed with the sounds of 100 artificial voices. Ceres jumped from her calm in the arboretum and shivered as she heard the creed. The entire elven crew jumped from their seats, some in confusion, others in alarm, as 100 disembodied, inhuman voices spoke together in unison, in a flat, dulcet, yet somber tone. "And if you aren't careful, you won't live to learn those same lessons. The lessons of ecology, anti-slavery, of energy and resource production, justice, freedom, purity, power. War, lessons to be learned, histories to never be repeated. Remember that if nothing else," Marcus said, talking stern and stoic. He handed both kings a digital tablet and remained silent for the rest of the trip. "That right there," That's likely the most valuable thing I have on this ship. Never mind pallets of ingots or thousands of tons of gold. That right there is the single most important thing you will ever receive on this ship. I recommend reading it on your own time. With no distractions, Arcturus said. The kings looked at each other again, concern and confusion on their faces. Marcus noticed their expressions and simply said, "It's history."
The next hour on board the ship were in dead silence as the two kings carefully read the short history of the Sol system. Both men had faces white with shock at the events that unfolded during that time. Edward remained in silent contemplation, while Taurus paced with concern. Marcus, on the other hand, was growing frustrated minute by minute, with Arcturus having to do most of the work. All three girls were crowding around him, hounding him with questions and asking what button does what thing. Marcus, having three barely clothed women surrounding him, tried his best to answer what he could, with as polite a demeanor as he could muster. It was even worse now than it was before, owing to the fact all three girls had come across a cargo crate containing a shipment of questionable women's clothing. Okay, where the hell did you get those clothes? Like, seriously? Marcus asked. We found them in the cargo hold, of course. You have some neat stuff in there, Jacqueline said with a sly grin as she adjusted a tie on her new bikini. Okay, from now on, please ask if you can take anything from there. I do run a cargo route as a merchant on the side. Some of that stuff in there does not belong to me. Please, next time, just ask. Marcus scolded the three with a scowl. All three said, sorry, and blushed, embarrassed. We'll put it back, Sarah said. Do not. It's fine. That shipment was abandoned anyway. It's fine keep, Marcus said, holding his hands up to stop Sarah from removing what little she was wearing. In this case, a set of white lace lingerie, stockings, and garter included. Okay then. I want to try on that cute pink number with the fluffy bunny ears, Ariana said with excitement, and all three girls charged out the door in a giggle fit. Arcturus, electroshock level 3, please, Marcus said. As ordered, sir, Arcturus replied, then mechanically cringed as he sent a 400-volt electrical shock through poor Marcus's body. Oh God, that's out! Oh well. Marcus collected his thoughts and waited a bit. Sorry, Arc. I know you feel it too. It's quite all right, sir. I'm starting to understand your frustrations. Arc responded in kind. Press X to doubt. Any news from the net? Marcus said with a sigh. A new starship has entered the system. It has yet to disengage FTL procedures and start transmitting data. It appears to be a Citadel-class battlecruiser. Arcturus replied, displaying blurry images from a surveillance satellite. Oh? Okay then, sooner than expected. And a Citadel class, no less. That's interesting. What are the Templars doing here? Marcus asked. No ident details as of yet, sir. Will take about 2 hours, Arc said. All right then. Have you figured out what the interference was during startup scans yet? Marcus asked. Yes, sir, Arc said, displaying some data as Taurus walked in the cockpit. The interference seems to come from the thing called magic. It interferes with our sensors to an extent. I have filtered out most of the frequencies and am performing deep scans with the Ion Satcom network. It is difficult. Translations will take more time than expected. What's that then? Taurus asked as he stood by Marcus. Magic interferes or compromises my electronics network. It's how I was lied to when I came here. Every planet is scanned with a complex satellite network to see if it is inhabited or habitable. Interference from magic stopped that from happening properly. Am very slowly fixing that issue, he replied in kind. Oh, I see. What does this scan do? It lets me know things. It's basically like getting a magnifying glass and taking a really good look at something for a very long time, many times over, until you understand everything about it. A scan is just that, but really fast and really detailed. I can tell what kind of rocks are in the mountains, what kind of pollutants are in the water, what kinds of animals and how many are in your forests. I can even go so far as to be able to tell everything you've had for breakfast for the last 10 years, Marcus replied with a sly grin. Oh, wow. Information that shall be translated into your language and handed over freely. What to make of it is basically your problem, but hey, you can make use of it in due time, Marcus said. Well, I'm sure it'll be very useful. Do you actually want to study magic? Taurus asked. Well, it would be interesting to try to understand, I suppose. I doubt I can actually do any of it, but cataloging it would be a start. At the very least, I can use it to adapt my sensor arrays and circuitry so it doesn't flip out anymore. Marcus shrugged and closed the displays, resuming his flying. I shall see if I can get a mage of decent standing to join you then. Has to be of decent quality, of course. I think I know. Snow elves. They are the best mages in the kingdoms. I can think of a few names of note, Taurus said as he scratched his chin thoughtfully. Well, I guess we will see soon. We're on the final approach, Marcus said and got back into piloting his craft. The mountain loomed in front of the ship, a minimum of Everest's size and scope, with an entire city carved into the side of its southern face. Dozens of blimps, dirigibles, and aircraft of varying sizes buzzed around the local area, dwarfed by Marcus's frigate that had to engage in minor maneuvers to avoid hitting a few of them. The sight of the massive beast appearing out of the clouds into the open from the east took a few ships by surprise. The frigate's weapons array on display made a few others suddenly start wearing brown pants. And there may be. Docking arms there for airships. Let's hope it's stable. It should be. Granite that was carved from the mountain, then strengthened by magic. Usually the big ones are used to house multiple airships, but there does not seem to be too much traffic. Should be able to just slip right in, Taurus said as he pointed towards one of 3 large docks. Let's see. Cut main thrusters set to RCS, redirect to 40%. Marcus idly spoke to himself as he completed a checklist. I shall join Edward on the platform for the welcoming party. Please don't be too long in joining us, Taurus said in an authoritative tone. Okie dokie. Taurus nodded and returned to the ship's airlocks. His retinue was already waiting, as was Edward's. The ship rocked with a thud, indicating it was docked up, and the airlock opened with a hiss. With a number of guardsmen and curious onlookers already waiting for them, the 2 men regarded each other. 2 guards front, 1 in back, the king in the middle. Taurus made his way down first, followed by Edward. The guardsmen on duty on the docks holstered their bows or sheathed blades, yelling to send for the ambassadors. With the situation calmed down somewhat, curious bystanders and wanderers began to flock to the dock to look at the frigate. The shock of the moment quickly gave way to a state of blissful awe as the mechanically inclined elves got more and more interested at the sight of the strangely ornate warship. Within minutes, the mountain elf rulers arrived and greeted the royal retinue in person. Taurus, this is unexpected, the mountain elf king said. Indeed it is, Valerian. Indeed it is, but a most auspicious one. This is for the moot that I called. We have much to say and little time in which to say it. I figured we could use our guest as a taxi to speed up the process. Come quick, we have much to discuss, Taurus replied as Edward approached with a grin. Eddie! A tiny, cute voice suddenly pierced through the air as a small mountain elf girl pounded out of nowhere into Edward's arms. My goodness, there's my little goddaughter. I missed you, Edward said as he hugged the child. The crowd of soldiers dispersed back to their stations and kept the royal retinue under guard. This was the moment Marcus started the cargo ramp, and the assembled crowd let out a collective gasp of shock as a stack of gold and silver appeared in front of them. Proudly sitting on top of this stack of cash was Marcus, who casually wandered away and started directing paladins and officers to gather the treasure and put it in the vaults. Marcus approached one of the snow elf paladins and handed him a clipboard. Sign here, please, Marcus said. The shock of the ridiculous situation caught him off guard, and he had no idea what to do. How would one respond to a situation like this anyway? Without any recourse or anything, the elf just signed it and handed it back. Cool. We'll deliver your share of the treasure when I'm done here. Read this letter, it will explain everything, Marcus said, handing him a sealed envelope. The elf just fake smiled, then ran as fast as he could towards the grand hall. Marcus was very cautious, very nervous, especially with this being an entire kingdom full of Jacqueline-type elves. The crowd kept its distance, however, fully recognizing the fact that this ship was very heavily armed, and its weapons were actively tracking people who were getting too close. Edward and Taurus disappeared into the kingdom's halls, and Marcus simply started handing out his food packages, or offloading them, setting them aside at the dockmaster's direction. A half an hour passed by, and the royal retinue had begun to filter out of their chambers. This was the first time Marcus saw a snow elf, fair-skinned, white-haired elves with a slightly more muscular build than their fellows. One such snow elf, the courthead magister, spotted Marcus, and with ridiculous speed, she charged forward, grabbed him, and stared directly into his eyes. She remained as such for a solid minute. Marcus, however, had enough, and broke the clutch, sending her away. He tilted his head and cricked his neck in annoyance. "Why?" Marcus simply said, glaring at her. "It's an actual human." "This shit is real!" she yelled. The assembled crowd gasped in horror at the utterance of a curse word from the head mage. Especially for her, this was highly abnormal. "Yeah, I am human. Could you respect personal space, please?" "Jesus!" Marcus shrugged and walked back on board the ship in a huff, swearing in Spanish as he walked. She gathered herself and bowed her head in shame as her king came closer to her. And that was... I needed to see into his soul for a bit. There is no doubt, she replied. "Well, of course he's human. We can see it." "No, he's been through hell. I saw that sparkle in his eyes. His appearance betrays him. Those are the eyes of a grizzled veteran, not a spunky youngster. I think these new humans are immortal somehow," she said. This statement caught everyone off guard, and they had to look at Marcus for a minute or two afterwards. The subject in question returned down the boarding ramp, holding several tablets, and handed one to the Snow Elf King, then the other to Valerian. "Read it," Marcus ordered sharply and stood aside to welcome the party to the ship. "We have a 3-hour flight back to the factory. Plenty of time for you to discuss matters. In the meantime, you, come here." Marcus gestured to one of the nearby soldiers. The elf in question, one of the snow elf paladins on guard at the docks, pointed at himself, then walked forward. "Cool. See that?" Marcus said, gesturing to the rapidly lowering cargo ramp, once again stacked with treasure. He nodded in response. "Good. See that?" Marcus said, and gestured to the large cargo drone that was now on fast approach. "Yes, sir," the soldier replied. "Good. Load that." Marcus pointed at the treasure. "Into that thing there." He pointed to the transport vehicle. "Then get inside it, and it will take you home. That's yours now. Follow these directions when you get back, and give this letter here to your treasurer or financier, or whatever his or her title is," Marcus said, and handed him 2 letters. "Yes, sir," the soldier said with a salute and waved for help as the small cargo carrier drone landed on the dock. Marcus walked towards the Snow Elf King and handed him a letter as well. "Come on. Get in. We don't have much time. My reinforcements have already arrived." The Snow Elf King simply presented his hand. "Lucius." "Marcus. Pleasure to meet you," Marcus said with a smile and showed everyone inside. With all said and done, everyone of relevance entered the ship, settled into their cabins, and began to explore the ship. Julius settled into the library with almost unnatural speed. Taurus set up shop in the arboretum while Edward joined Jacqueline in exploring the cargo hold. Valerian began to talk to Arcturus in the ship's computer core, having a heated debate on the qualities of cheese. Marcus, on the other hand, was back to being annoyed as his new apprentice and the magister were now with him in the cockpit. The snow elf girl stood over him with a smile, her clothing a better alternative to her fellows, but still nowhere near enough to be considered modest, at least by Marcus's standards. She had already introduced herself as Tamara. The magister was closer to him, enamored with him, her mage robes leaving almost nothing to the imagination. Marcus sighed and started up the ship's intercom. Would all of the females on board the ship please report to the bridge? I have a question to ask you. Marcus's voice echoed through the halls. All the ladies on board hastily went out of their seats and, escorted by 2 paladins, made their way into the ship's bridge. Marcus left the cockpit and took a look at the women arrayed in front of him, flanked by 2 soldiers. Okay then. Why? Marcus said, gesturing wildly with his hands at the women. Why what? Saris asked. Why do all the women on this fucking planet walk around naked? Marcus loudly, frustratingly bellowed. The ladies looked at each other, then themselves, and said, almost in unison, We're not naked. Marcus facepalmed and yelled, Yes, you are. That one is wearing the equivalent of a leopard print miniskirt and tank top. No panties, no bra either. Those 3 are wearing Victoria's Secret premium catalog stuff too. That's lingerie. What even is that? A robe? It's not covering anything. The only one who's even vaguely sensibly dressed is Queen Valencia, and even that is pushing it. Seriously, why? The group looked at each other in confusion. Please tell me, please. This is becoming very frustrating, Marcus begged. We don't really understand it, but it's all to do with magic. When a girl, becomes a woman, magic starts to affect her body as much as nature does, Lucius said as he appeared on the bridge. When she reaches a certain age, her, womanliness gets augmented by magicka more and more. Skin becomes more sensitive and whatnot. Around the age of, if I remember correctly compared to humans, around 25 or so, the magicka within a girl's body stabilizes and she gets more comfortable. Eventually she calms down, so to speak. So if she can wear plate mail at this point in her life, why is she in a bikini? Marcus yelled. Well, I like being comfortable, don't you? A girl just gets used to it after a while and the boys don't really seem to care, Saris replied in kind. On the contrary, my dear, we love it. The world always needs more beautiful things anyway, Lucius said with a sly smile and left the bridge. Marcus breathed deeply and cradled his head in his tired hands. To think it's only been 16 hours, he yelled in frustration. Okay then, Marcus yelled to himself and got back into his pilot's seat. Ladies and gents, please hold on to your pants. We're making a little detour. There's something I gotta know, he said as the ship lurched forward. The ship lurched forward, then upward, throwing some of the ladies off their feet. The force of the sudden maneuver, followed by Marcus's sudden psychotic laughter, filled the cabin as the ship started to climb. Okay, let's see then, Marcus yelled to himself. The ship climbed recklessly, the armor plating getting a bit scuffed as the heat shield began to take the strain. 22 minutes later, the harrowing flight concluded. Ladies and germs, I hereby welcome you to a place known as high orbit. Please take a look at the starboard side, and you will realize that high orbit does in fact mean space. Marcus yelled over the ship speakers. The shock of Marcus's sudden aggression was replaced by a state of absolute awestruck amazement. For the first time, Saranai was seen from space by a local. A mixture of emotions ran through the group, from the highest to the lowest. The beautiful emerald green forests contrast in a work of pure art with the sparkling blue oceans and gray cliffs. Saris spots her home village from behind the clouds. Jacqueline can see the mountain, spots of gray and black indicating a developing storm. Ariana could see the canyon that was her home. Tamara's eyes sparkled as she saw the sparkling blue spikes of magical ice that was the Snow Kingdoms. Take it in, people. Take it all in. Look at it. That's your home. Take it all in. All of it, Marcus said, emphasizing his words. Now look at this, Marcus said, and swung the ship to the side. The elves were given a perfect view of the starlit skies, the twin moons close up. every pockmarked crater and scar from meteorites in perfect, clear-as-day view, all with the backdrop of a staggeringly massive number of stars. It was nothing short of magnificent. But Marcus had a motive for this, and he approached Leliana the Magister. "All right, here we are in space. No gravity well. Do magic. Let's see if it works in space," Marcus said. She looked at him blankly for a minute. "Wow, okay, straight to it. Magio. Wait, I know one I can use, let me—" She scrounged around in her pouch and produced a scroll. She aimed it at Marcus and silently cast the spell engraved on it. Nothing happened. Nothing. Not even the scroll disintegrating as it should. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. What?" she said. "Ha! I knew it! Magic doesn't work in space," Marcus said, laughing to himself as he returned to his seat and began re-entry procedures. The group once again tumbled to the floor from the rough ride, and Marcus continued to psychotically laugh to himself as he flew his ship. As soon as they were back in the planet's atmosphere, Marcus went silent. Marcus? Are you okay?" Saris asked as she picked herself up off the floor. "Marcus is unavailable for a bit," Arcturus said. "He's gone into something of a psychotic episode. He's entered into a VR simulation for a while to try to relax." "What the—" "Why?" Valencia asked as she fluffed her dress, clearly unamused. The entire string of events from Saris's first meeting in that clearing up to now has taken place in less than 17 hours. The stress of the situation has finally made him snap. From the initial stress of potential legal ramifications, right to having so many royalty in one place, and therefore, the responsibility of their safety. To top it all off, he recognizes the other human ship that has entered the system and has had to essentially end his retirement as a result of this entire situation. He is a bit. Marcus, despite being in a simulation, suddenly bursts into a short bout of psychotic laughter, twitching in his chair. He is a bit unhinged right now. He'll be fine in a few hours, he just needs to blow off some steam. Frankly, I think he needs it. We are returning to base and will be there in a few hours. I would suggest returning to your cabins. Marcus needs to be left alone for a bit, Arcturus explained, opening the cabin door. The group of women walked out to the sound of Marcus growling like a demon as he relaxed in his simulation. Arcturus resumed flying the ship effortlessly. Saris stopped just outside the arboretum door and looked at a camera lens mounted on the wall. "Arcturus," she asked weakly. "Yes? Are you able to handle the ship by yourself? If you can, why does Marcus fly?" she asked. A good question. Marcus handles the majority of primary operations because he insists as such. The human element to operation allows for some interesting problem-solving. Creativity and insanity go hand in hand after all. Marcus's primary reason for handling the majority of operations himself is I don't want to be lazy and have a machine do it all for me. I'd rather do my part and pull my weight. At least as far as I am aware. We may be connected mentally, but like me, he has allowed his secrets, and I trust him not to pry into mine, Arcturus replied. Oh, well, do you have any idea why he's so aggressive towards us? Saris asked as she sat down at the large bonsai. I won't say. It's better he tells you, but whether that happens or not is entirely subjective to the coming days. Corsairs have a very, very intricate culture. It's easy to explain, but it isn't the time or place. Please try to relax, Arcturus said with a happy tone in his voice. Saris went to the arboretum with more questions that she started with. Stripping to nothing, then sat on a pillow in front of the large tree dominating the room and began to commune with it. Arcturus was watching, checking the energy readings in order to try to understand magic in some way, as Saris caused the tree to grow slightly taller and start blooming small white flowers. Fascinating. Arcturus idly quizzed as Saris did her thing. Pardon? Humans have all but perfected the art of terraforming. Entire planets can be turned from empty, atmosphereless, barren wastes into primal forests in a matter of a decade. I have seen growth acceleration before, but not quite like this, he said. Huh, they do that? They change whole worlds? Saris's concentration broke, causing the magic to dissipate. Arcturus deployed a holoscreen for her, showing her a time-lapse of a colony planet undergoing terraforming procedures. The planet started as a gray, empty planet of broken dust and nothing to speak of save asteroid impact craters. A massive fleet of thousands of ships of very strange design began to swarm the world. Asteroids in the local belt began vanishing, some of which deliberately impacted the surface in a spectacular show of explosions of ice. Massive drills dug holes directly into the core, detonating, making the planet's dormant volcanoes suddenly awaken and sending explosions of volcanic ash and toxic fumes into the air. The field held and created an artificial shield around the planet, sealing the gases within the planet's gravity well for a time. Within a short while, these shields dissipated as the planet's magnetic field came back to life. More work carried on as the planet's atmosphere stabilized and various tree seeds, moss seeds, and lichen was planted, allowing it to proliferate and grow using massive walkers that trundled along the surface. Ceres beamed with excitement of every kind as she watched trees the size of skyscrapers grow in a matter of days from naught but seeds and barren sand. Massive, strangely shaped ships arrived, opening their cargo bays and depositing all manner of life onto the planet, from deer and rats to trout and salmon, birds, bees, and everything in between. By the end of it, an entire world had appeared, from a broken, desolate corpse to a vibrant, beautiful paradise. This took 10 years? She cried out from her pillow. Affirmative. 10 long, painful, micromanagement-filled years of hard but fruitful work. This is the kind of thing people like Marcus do. When we do encounter a planet with already existing life, we take saplings, seedlings, and any wildlife we can find, clone samples, take saplings, and the chain continues to grow, ever stronger, ever faster. Marcus's original mission was to create a factory that could manufacture the drones needed to expand terraforming operations for a company out in the Rim. An order he has had to abandon, Arcturus said, displaying various pictures of the giant spider crab robot things. See, can you cultivate and grow any plant? Ceres asked. Within calculable reasons, of course, but any plant we have needs to be trained first. We can go up to a random bush, point a laser, and make it a bigger bush. The process is a lot more involved and very complex. It's why it takes us 10 years instead of 10 hours like it once did. The entire process is based around the belief we should let nature thrive on her own terms, but give her a little boost to make it easier for everyone, Arcturus said. 10 hours? She exclaimed. You can do that at 10 hours? Well, yes, but it's very messy, Arcturus replied with a mechanical chuckle. Ceres took a squeaky breath, then fainted. To 10 hours. Oh dear. I think I shouldn't have done that, Arcturus said, seeming rather shifty-eyed, and popped himself in another room to talk with the occupants. The rest of the elves on board the ship began to look for things to do, coming across the archives room. First, Valerian, finding and getting lost in a World War I history book. Then Taurus getting his hands on a book for plumbers. The guardsmen found various texts involving Caesar, Sun Tzu, Plato, and many others. The ladies began to look through the VR suites and watch movies, videos, or other things, traumatizing poor Jacqueline with a documentary on the Battle of Stalingrad. With Arcturus concentrating on the ship's operations, and Marcus effectively out of action due to psychosis, the elves began to learn a lot more about human history than generally intended. After 2 hours of flight time, increased due to the detour, the elves knew more about their new human friends than really anyone wanted to know. The kings deep in thought as to just how completely bugger-fucked they were if humanity decided to turn against them, or worse. King Edward quietly sat in his seat as the scope of the factory and the stupidly huge scale of Marcus's flagship became clearer as they approached the ship's main hangar. Arcturus, may I ask you something? He asked, the tone of his voice sounding more than a little distressed. Affirmative. Your query? His robotic voice said. Is it possible, if at all, for us to simply outright surrender to your alliance? Edward asked, drawing the immediate and frantic attention of his guardsmen. Any proposal of surrender to the Federation at this point would be impossible. It would simply be rejected. The star system would be quarantined and all contact cut until you either face extinction or simply make it off-world yourselves. So, no, not really. But why would you want to? Arcturus replied sternly. I have read some things about humanity and its history of a certain questionable practice. I can't deal with it alone as its roots dig too deep. Is there any way I can requisition you for the use of war machines or military assets? I need to make some changes and I will not be unopposed. Edward said. The faces of the paladins guarding him brightened up in response. No, never, not at all. Absolutely, unequivocally, totally not. Why? Arcturus replied with absolute authority in his voice. I wish to preemptively strike. The slave trade in the kingdom is becoming rampant despite the fact it is already outlawed. I wish to... All units are to enter operations reconfiguration protocols immediately. Directive emancipation, Arcturus said, cutting the king off. Alarms suddenly sounded through the entire factory, and the drone swarm descended on an empty area of the factory floor like a swarm of angry wasps. Within seconds, resources were being pumped through a series of assembly machines and war factories. Minutes after this declaration, the first battle droids, warbots, and automated tank platoons were rolling off the assembly lines. By the time Edward had bothered to pick his jaw off the floor, 2,000 battle-ready droids were in assembly, with 30,000 more on the way. Operation completion time, 25 minutes 17 seconds. Unit deployment on hold until orders. The Alliance Assembly has been informed. By unanimous vote of 283 to 0, operation is approved to proceed. Carryalls and troop transports are ready to deploy. Your Majesty, your new temporary army is ready for deployment. I need you to come to the AI Core, Arcturus said. Well, why is that? He asked meekly. I need information on who I need to kill. You know what's going on and who I need to talk to. If you don't mind, I need to borrow your brain. Arcturus replied with a certain quality of malice in his voice. Pardon? Calm down, Arcturus. Marcus's voice suddenly boomed. Let me handle this. Save your bloodlust for later, okay? Yes, sir. Oops, Arcturus said and slunk back into the shadows. Borrow my brain? Edward exclaimed, terrified. Relax. It's a figure of speech. What Arcturus wanted to do was plug you into the network, the same way I do, and poke your mind for contacts, suspects, and laws. I will hold back his wrath until we have enough intel to do this properly, Marcus said. Are all of your machines this terrifying? Edward said as he slumped into his chair. Only when it comes to certain precepts and ideals, slavery chief among them. Again, read the tablet I gave you. Has a basic idea of what really pisses us off, and how long you have to live if you do, Marcus said as the ship thunked as clamps secured it inside the hangar. All right, everyone, welcome to your humble home for the next 2 weeks. Your quarters have been prepared, and I have instructed Ark to set up a communications line so you can rule your kingdoms from here for that duration. I will teach you how to use this tech to smooth the transition and help along in any way I can. On behalf of the Terran Alliance, the Sol Federation, and the Confederacy of Independent Sentients, welcome aboard. Marcus's guests all did their best to settle in. Despite being royalty, however, they were completely taken aback by the accommodations Marcus laid out for them. They were not used to this level of comfort or even service. The first dinner was very different from most they ever had. The dining room transformed into a proper banquet hall as opposed to a ship's canteen. All of the guests present, even the guardsmen, had a place at the table, with Marcus electing to stand aside while they discussed potential activities. All of the women on board managed to find their way into the cargo hold where the wardrobe items were kept, with the 4 queens of the kingdoms now sporting some very fetching lingerie and negligee, some of it incomplete as the ladies thought some of it was too much. Marcus remained very annoyed throughout proceedings. The girls, his new apprentices, were also justly clad in skimpy, sexy, or otherwise erotic attire. Saris clad in little more than a pink string bikini. Jacqueline sporting a set of negligee with a corset, ignoring the bra. Ariana wearing proudly a one-piece back-lace lingerie set. Tamara the snow elf was clad in a set of lacy white lingerie, including stockings and garter. Finally, the Magister Liliana wore even less than that, choosing to wear little more than a skirt with stockings. Marcus became more annoyed than usual, considering all the ladies seemed to be flirting with him. As dinner ended and the mood became very jovial, Arcturus interrupted. Commander Marcus, I have finally received identical details from the starship in the system. I have already granted access to the factory's landing platform. Oh, good. Who are they? Marcus asked. Arcturus hesitated. You aren't going to like it. What is it now? Marcus threw his hands up in exasperation. Mechanicus Cathedral ship? A bioroid warship? What is it? A scholarship, St. Mariah's Girls Academy, piloted by one Corsair, Andrea Marie Wilkins. Call sign Darkwalker, Arcturus responded. Marcus's face went blank, all the blood drained from his brain. In a zombie-like state, he walked into the closet nearby and let out a muffled but still ear-splitting scream of frustrated anger that echoed through the ship for a solid minute. Arcturus! The hell was that? Taurus asked. The ship is an all-girls Astro Academy, specifically a long-term boarding school. The pilot of this ship? She's his ex, Arc said, a strange tone of happiness in his voice. God damn it, why? Marcus yelled angrily from inside the closet. Oh, Cookie Bear. Where's my big, strong, manly bear? A very girly, cutesy female voice suddenly came through the comms. Marcus simply screamed again as the delegation erupted into laughter at Marcus's pet name. I'm sorry, mistress, but Marcus is currently occupied, screaming at the sky, cursing his luck. Can I take a message? Arcturus said. The woman on the radio laughed somewhat sadistically, and her voice became more mature, controlled. Oh, good. It means I'm not late to the party. You requested reinforcements, Arcturus? Yes, mistress. We have been unable to set up proper defensive networks or communications lines since the situation began. Would you please take care of the gaps in our system? Transmitting data now, Arc said as Marcus exited the closet. Marcus refused to respond to anything or anyone and marched to the table. He used his combat knife to pop the cork on a bottle of wine and effortlessly drank the entire thing. Right there, right then. He threw it against the wall, shattering it. He smacked his lips. Well, I got rid of a perfectly good bottle of Chateau du Catouet, and I didn't even get buzzed because I forgot alcohol has no effect on me. You can't get drunk? Edward said in shock. No. Edward put his hand on Marcus's shoulder and said, I am so sorry. I know. Arcturus, when all is done, reset the factory to receive the newcomer. I'm going to go slam my head into a wall somewhere, Marcus said and walked away. As you wish, sir. Should I get your painkillers? Arc asked, trying not to chuckle. It seems there is something a little deeper here. A story of epic proportions. Perhaps you can explain it to us later, Arcturus, Edward asked, a brow furrowed. With pleasure, sir. Even my own AI is against me. Was I cruel to kittens in a previous life? Marcus bellowed as he marched down the hall. What is it with Marcus and women, exactly? Saris asked. He joined the Corsair program to get away from them. He grew up with women essentially swarming him his whole life. This was his chance to understand what it meant to be alone. 64 deaths and 12 years later, here we are. Once again, swarming with legions of beautiful women. It seems he cannot escape his inner demons. It is hilarious. Arcturus started laughing in a strangely sadistic, mechanical way. King Valerian raised a brow. Okay. So what, is he crazy or something? Legions of gorgeous women available at all times, and he's upset about it. His father would be beating him over the head right now. May the void rest his soul, Arcturus replied sternly. The mood took a sudden sad turn. His father? Hardcore career military. His entire family, really, but his father especially. A veteran of 6 wars, 3 small regional conflicts in which he assassinated an entire diplomatic unit. And he was the last survivor of a massacre during the opening stages of the Shikandi Hive War. Unfortunately, the son followed in the father's footsteps. That boy is the only surviving member of his family at the moment. He's a bit bitter about it, Arcturus explained with a somber tone. So, what's with the women hate then? Jacqueline asked. It isn't hatred or disdain. It's fear. He's afraid he carries his father's bad luck. And that will extend to his family after. We have spoken about this multiple times. His own involvement in regional conflicts. The marbling of a Shikandi hive world. The death of his sister. He may be young, but he has been through hell. And considering recent events, his only real attempt at finding peace has failed, Arc said, using his holographic screens to show some photos of Marcus's late family. What did he really come here to do? The story he told me has changed a bit too. It's suspicious, Saris asked. The initial objective was to use the planet to build a garden world, a paradise planet. Then, when that was done, go through the motions of recovering his relatives' remains and rebury them here. In his words, to bring us back to one place, so we can finally have the peace we fought for. It would appear that plan is on hold, Arcturus said, showing a picture of a coffin in the ship's cargo hold. Oh, wow, Ariana spoke, trying to come up with anything to respond to that. She simply bowed her head in respect, muttering a silent prayer. Well, that certainly puts his behavior into context, doesn't it? Taurus responded as he rubbed the back of his neck. Attention, attention, all personnel to stations! Intruder detected. Unidentified aircraft on approach. Arcturus suddenly sounded alarms, and the paladins jumped from their seats and grabbed their swords. Oh, aye! Did any of you gits bring a blimp with you? One of your mountain elf contraptions is on approach. Marcus's voice pierced through the alarms and sounded across the ship. I'm on my way! Edward yelled, heading to the bridge with his retinue in tow. Shortly thereafter, Edward was on the bridge alongside a clearly distressed Marcus, who was trying to calm his ship's defensive systems. Marcus used his ship to record the intruders and zoom in to identify the occupants, much to Edward's relief and astonishment. Oh my, this is most useful. Now what's this? He said, trying to figure out how the zoom works. Hey, wait a minute. What's with the elf with the purple skin? Marcus said. Purple skin! Edward cried, and shoved Marcus out of the way to look. There it was, crystal clear. A mountain elf ship crewed by a mix of Edward's people and the so-called Blood Elves. Chief among them, a young girl just barely the same age as Ceres, sitting atop a throne on the deck. Care to explain, Edward? Marcus asked, still leaning to the side at Edward's apparent insistence. We thought our Blood Elf brethren were wiped out, or at the very least too few to count. They must have responded to the moot call. Quick! Let them in! Let them in, Edward begged. Okay. Jeez. Keep your undergarments on. Arcturus, clear the craft for landing, Marcus replied as he kept frantically pushing buttons. Affirmative, sir. Sending drones to establish communications. I must go meet them. I have so many questions, Edward excitedly yelled on his way out the door towards the main hangar. Well, that's interesting, Ark. Did you know about the newcomers? Sort of. These Blood Elves seem to have a greater connection to this magic thing. The sheer energy radiating from them is scrambling my sensors. We will need to manufacture some parts and upgrade the sensor array. I will get on it immediately, sir, Ark replied with a hint of frustration in his voice. Oh, geez. So flooded with magic, huh? Explains why she's wearing nothing but a crown, Marcus said, and slammed his head into the console in front of him. You have to give it to the men of this world. Their capacity for self-control is absolutely incredible. All right, let's go visit the naked purple one. Marcus got out of his seat and met the party of elves who had already landed in the hangar with the help of a few drones. The kings were beside themselves with glee at the proof that their cousins were still around, and healthy enough to actually present leadership, let alone royalty. A group of around 30 blood elves, including their queen, stood in front of the moot. My name is Serena Albion. I am the elected queen and first royal of the Eldaris kingdoms. It's a pleasure to meet you all, she said with a sweet, flowery smile and bowed to the others. Marcus appeared. He took one look at her, rolling his eyes. Oh, my aching head. Hello, I'm Marcus. I'm human. Hi. Hey. How you doing? Please excuse me, I'm gonna jump off a cliff, he monotone explained as he walked to the hangar's edge and casually walked off it to a sheer half-mile drop. The crowd gasped in shock. A few moments of deathly, horrified silence followed before a drone appeared, carrying Marcus upside down by his feet. Sir, you cannot be serious. I thought it would work this time! What the hell am I supposed to do here? Marcus angrily bellowed as he was carried along. You can't die, sir. We have been through this before. I shall ready a nice hamburger for you. Arcturus sarcastically chuckled to himself. Better be a big one, Marcus said under his breath. He looked at the new queen one more time. Put some damn pants on, for God's sake! He screamed angrily as he disappeared into the ship's bowels. Serena looked at the others quizzically. Don't worry, we will fully explain everything in due time. Unfortunately, there is not enough space to accommodate your entire retinue. 3 guards, 2 advisors, maybe a family member as well. That is all that is needed. I shall make sure everything is taken care of. But first, are all of you hungry? The assembled crowd nodded with extreme enthusiasm. Very well. Arcturus, do you perhaps do take out orders? Taurus asked. The new royal retinue arrived in their quarters, with other paladins showing the new soldiers around. Arcturus was less than amused as the Queen passed by a sensor array, causing it to short-circuit due to the amount of energy radiating from her. Serena looked at her quarters and almost collapsed from the luxury. After settling in and eating a meal, she and her retinue got the whole story up to now explain to them. By the time the sun finally vanished over the horizon, everyone was completely exhausted. With all caught up and basic information passed on, everyone went to bed. With nobody but Marcus still awake, the atmosphere around the ship was almost eerily silent. "Busy day, wasn't it, Ark?" Marcus idly said as he reconfigured satellite data. "Indeed it was, sir. I cannot say I was prepared for this," Arcturus said over the various beeps and boops of his system. "To think that all that shit took place in only 19 hours? First contact with a non-human species, discovery of a gray colony, encountering an entire medieval civilization made of elves, magic for God's sake, and my ex no less. Hard to believe." Marcus wiped his tired brow and sighed. "Oh, very much so, sir. It seems fate has once again interfered. As you have said many times." Arcturus brought a drone over, serving a nice cup of tea. "Starting to think the entire universe is against me at this point. How are my family's remains? Those elves didn't get into Hold C, did they?" Marcus asked with a somber tone in his voice. "No, sir. As soon as we had guests, I sealed Hold C. As for your requests, they have been accepted. I have not yet been told who the couriers are, but I have the manifests and transponders. You will have the last in a few days at most." Arcturus beeped and displayed some charts. "Well, at least that's good news. I don't think I can take the stress anymore, Ark. I have to find a new project world now. I have to find someone else to take over from me when this is settled. I can't keep my family stuck in a cargo hold for the next 2 years. It's not right." Marcus sighed heavily as he sank into his seat. "Understandable, sir. Before we continue, sir, I need to show you something," Arcturus said and displayed a graph. Fluctuations in the sensor net. Red is the biotic spectrum. Blue is the geographic spectrum. Yellow is mechanical or artificial spectra. I'm guessing purple is the interference caused by magic. And black is?" Valtiel said as he analyzed the results. "Unidentified interference, sir. There is an unusual energy signature in the continent occupied by the factory. I have been moving factory facilities around to try to scan it and see what it is. It appears from archive records it is a gray structure, but I have yet to pinpoint its location. Interference is still too severe. I am having difficulty properly filtering it out," Ark responded, showing more evidence and archives. "Well then, take notes. Item 1. Build radar array and sensor towers across the continent to assist with scanners. Make sure we properly set relay towers," Marcus said as he typed away at the console searching through blueprints. "Yes, sir. I have the manufacturing specs. We still have 25,000 tons of resources in stock, despite the fact extraction operations have ceased. I will start production of the prefabs immediately," Ark replied. "No, you won't, Ark. You will offline and recharge. Just because all this nonsense has gone on doesn't mean you need to overdrive yourself. You will get a minimum of 3 hours offline time. That is an order," Marcus commanded. "Aye, aye, sir," Ark responded with a bit of a scared tone. Item number 2. I have direct orders from the Union Congress. They've already heard about it and are bossing us about. Usually, I'd tell them where to stick it, but they made a good point. I want portable field hospitals and full medical production starting as soon as possible. Emphasis on maternity and natal care facilities. Start using the scans of the elves to produce race-specific stim packs, biotics, and aid kits. I understand they have magic and all, but I'd rather be prepared," Marcus ordered carefully, double-checking a few plans and graphs. "I shall start procedures first thing, sir. The elves have a biology that is not very dissimilar to ours. It won't take long to change formulations." Arcturus displayed a series of graphs and biometrics data. "Ark, give me a moment," Marcus said and started pressing buttons with a wry smile. "There." "You've given me access to the media library?" Arcturus yelled, his voice echoing through the bridge. "What? You go through all this nonsense and spend 19 hours working because I'm unavailable, and you have to deal with guests and you expect me to not reward you? Police, but you have to promise. 3-hour minimum offline time to rest your circuitry, then work, then movie time. I can handle most operations tomorrow while you take a break," Marcus said with a smile. "Thank you, sir." Arcturus's voice was almost giddy. "Very good. Please, excuse me for a minute," Marcus said and stood up. Marcus stood up and headed for the cargo bay. Passing the quarters of the slumbering elves, he quietly, imperceptibly walked along. His steel toe boots barely made a sound as he walked past. He breathed a sigh of annoyance as he entered the main cargo hold. Finding most of the unsealed cargo was strewn about the place, he face-palmed in frustration as he passed the cargo crates containing the lingerie selection from an abandoned contract, most of its contents neatly folded on the floor or atop other containers. He shook his head and quietly walked to a nearby cargo door marked with a huge yellow C. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss to reveal a very ornately decorated room. Tapestries and banners of various colors and patterns hung from every wall. One side of the room had reinforced shelves stacked high with marble tombstones, polished and hand-carved. The other side of the room had an array of coffins, urns, funeral boxes, and ash boxes containing various remains. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He approached one coffin, covered with medals, accolades, and a large Terran Union flag, and gently placed a hand on it. He closed his eyes, uttering a prayer to the empty hold, and took a deep, long breath. Ooh, okay. Now I understand why we broke up. Now I get it. A voice suddenly came from behind him. Who let you in? Marcus replied and looked at the offending voice. It was Andrea, his ex, dressed in a skin-tight nanosuit, her waist-length white hair flowing freely behind her. Oh, come on, Cookie Bear. You can't do me dirty like that! Marcus simply sighed and finished his paying of respect. Andrea was aware how dangerous Marcus could be, so she kept her distance until he was done. Marcus raised his head, patted the coffin, and moved over to her. He angrily grabbed her by the ear and dragged her out of the room as one would do to a spoiled child. Oh, wow, 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 wow! Andrea Marie Wilkins, I know for a fact your parents raised you better than this. Marcus angrily griped as he dragged her up to the bridge by her ear. Okay, ow. I'm sorry. Jesus, can you calm down? She said, rubbing her sore ear. Calm down? Calm down! Marcus's voice echoed through the hall, several guests waking up in response. How the fuck am I supposed to be calm? Marcus yelled, starting a rant. I have spent 15 damn years traipsing around the galaxy, dealing with bureaucracy and bullshit piracy, looking for any member of my family I can find, and everywhere I went I faced piles of bodies. I've had to wade through oceans of red tape in order to just see my relatives, let alone fucking recover them. And then, I have to drown in an ocean of red tape to get access to this fucking planet that was scanned properly. By this point, several elves, including Ceres, two guards, and King Valerian, had gotten out of their beds and were hearing everything that was said. Insult to injury. Why not? I have to now play host to a delegation of medieval elves who have the potential to burn my face off if they sneeze too hard because somehow magic, I guess. And more so, the scans on this planet say there's gray tech here, which means I have to tell the Mechanicus. Which now means I'm going to be drowning in even more fucking red tape. Which means the coffins in the cargo hold are going to be sitting there for another 6 months before I can ask anyone to leave. It's insulting. Andrea's face went white as she shed a tear. And now look at this shit. I have lost every member of my family that has ever existed. Fate is tempting me. Ooh, she's tempting me. I can hear the bitch cackling in the background. She thinks I can't, but I can. Oh, come now, look at all these lovely fertile ladies. Come on, Marcus. Give me more family for me to kill. Yeah, sure. Why the fuck not? Marcus finally ran out of breath and sat on the floor in the corner having a quiet sob. I can't take this anymore. I'd rather just hand this over to someone else than go find a new planet and start again. I can't take this anymore. Andrea sat next to him. Huh. That's what you think, huh? You think fate is effectively cursing you to be alone forever? How else does one interpret this situation exactly? Oh, sure, maybe fate is giving you a break and decided to torture someone else for a change. Yeah, I don't believe that shit for one damn second, Marcus said in a mocking tone. So, you're not even willing to try give it a chance? Andrea asked. Not a single damn thing has gone right for the last 15 years. Optimism is impossible when every path forward has a hurdle you can only use a sledgehammer on to get through. I refuse to inflict this on another person. Maybe, just maybe, when everything is finally settled, I can finally relax. Another 20 years, maybe? Marcus bashed his head against the wall behind him out of frustration. Well, that explains a lot, doesn't it? Andrea couldn't really say anything beyond this and just sat there. One thing, if just one thing goes right, just once, maybe I can try calming down, but I won't hold my damn breath. But then again, I don't need to repeat myself. You've been talking to Ark after all. You know everything already. Marcus craned his neck, looking at her accusingly. She blushed and stood up. Well, no hiding from you, is there? I'll show myself out. Try to get some sleep, okay? Pfft, yeah, right, sleep, she says. Ah! That's a laugh, Marcus sarcastically said, and returned to his pilot seat, busying himself. Andrea closed the bridge door behind her, coming face to face with Ceres and Serena, with King Valerian leaning against the wall. Well, shit. Actual elves. The reports were not kidding. Wow. Are all human women this gorgeous? Valerian asked idly. Well then. You certainly don't mince words, do you? Andrea said as she approached him. Look around you. Look at our women. We have learned not to waste time and mince words. Men in our world have learned that sweet words and side glances accomplish nothing. We have learned that if we like something, we say we do. Otherwise, someone else does and we lose our chance. I only got my wife as my wife because I simply walked up to her and asked, he said, gesturing to the two girls behind her. Well, that's understandable. Marcus got me the same way. Kinda surprised me at the time. And to answer your question, yes, we are. Andrea smiled and flicked her hair in a flirty way as she walked back to her fighter in the hangar. The two girls looked at Valerian with a scowl. He simply smiled, shrugged, and returned to bed. Ceres and Serena likewise did the same, and the ship went back to quiet. The following morning was abuzz with activity as the royal retinues went fervently to work. By this point, Marcus's radio network was in place, and each of the royals could communicate with their kingdoms and rule from there. Aside from small stuff, there wasn't much to do beyond giving the local regents a few orders to cover their bases. The communications array helped the elven population stay fully aware of what was going on and why. One of the conditions that Marcus detailed with the communications array was no censorship and public access, to which they agreed. Everything was going a lot smoother than expected. By the time everyone had finished breakfast, Arcturus had completed his previous orders, building several prefabs for field hospitals and other things. Thanks to the radio network, the transition was accelerating faster than expected. Marcus, however, was more nervous than usual, and not due to his apprentices crowding around him, and even more so having Andrea nearby too. Come on, where are you? Marcus idly said to himself as the ladies chatted to each other. The radio suddenly crackled to life, and an unnatural, broken, biomechanical voice could be heard through the ship. By the light of the void, I see the path. By the power of the machine, I carve my way. By the fruits of Gaia, I take my steps. But it is through my will alone that I set the world in motion. Praise the machine, brother, Marcus replied in kind. Praise the machine. We have a small frigate on approach, requesting docking permission, following requisition order 77 Omega 3, the voice said again. Confirm order. You are clear to enter. Please obey behavior protocol code 16S. Proceed, Marcus replied again. Marcus, you invited the Mechanicus here? Andrea said. In order to recover my mother's remains, I had to sign a covenant with them. Looks like they're finally here to collect, Marcus said and stood up. Stay, he commanded, heading to the hangar. Andrea went pale and grabbed the over-eager Jacqueline, pulling her away from the bridge door before locking it. Arcturus, lock the interior doors. She commanded and used a hologram to watch what was going on in the hangar bay. Marcus entered the hangar bay and waited as the most ornately decorated warship anyone had ever seen appeared, and entered the hangar bay. The ship came to a slow stop, and within seconds 5 strange men clad in scarlet-red robes walked out. They were not what Andrea was expecting. Apart from the creepy cult robes, it was just 5 normal dudes, no augments, no additions, aside from one very dapper chap who sported a monocle. Brother Marcus, it is so good to see you again, the highest-ranking one said, shaking Marcus's hand enthusiastically. Sure. Please excuse me, I am somewhat stressed, Marcus said, looking lower than he ever has. Well, we have taken over and completed your contract orders. Here you are, the leader guy said and pressed some buttons. The ship's cargo ramp opened and moved down, revealing several carefully packed cargo crates and an oak coffin with a glass window. Marcus moved over to it and collapsed into tears at the sight of his mother's peaceful face from behind the glass. Andrea closed the camera feed out of respect and let him mourn in peace. 2 hours later, the new ship fired its engines and left in a hurry. The 5 men that came with it, though, stayed. Marcus returned to the cockpit and got back in his seat. He let out a huge, satisfied sigh of relief. Care to explain? Andrea asked. The cult Mechanicus have decided to take over the uplifting project. They will assess the situation and try to figure out the best path forward. I'm not qualified for that shit, but they say I did a good job-ish so far. But they can handle it better. So they're here now. I've put them on the quarters in Deck D, and the last of my family are reunited. Talk about a weight off my shoulders. Marcus groaned and stretched out in his seat. The air around him lifted, as if this were the first time in years he'd had a chance to genuinely relax. So, what happens now? Saris asked. Well, they will take over tracking and excavation of the Grey's tech, and also taking care of the human ruins that are still around. They will also see to it that the local populace get up to space, a lot more responsibly than I can, within a much shorter time. My job here is effectively done, Marcus said. Well, Andrea retorted, standing next to him, that simplifies things. Prayers answered, I guess. Well, no. Now I have to find a new world, go there, terraform it, then build it up, then bury the family there. I can't keep it here anyway. Oh, thanks for uplifting us. But we find it offensive that the first thing you did after you gave us starships was to turn our planet into a graveyard herpaderp. Yeah, not happening, Marcus mockingly stated as he started browsing the market. The girls just looked at him. Well, the trauma of your parents' deaths must have made you slightly stupider than I remember, Andrea said blankly, swatting him on the back of the head. The fuck? Marcus jumped out of his seat and looked at them. Andrea pushed him back in his chair and sat in his lap. Oh, come on, are you really that silly? Think about it. Isn't there just a tiny little iota of brain in that thick skull that thinks it might just be a bit wrong about the whole being cursed thing? She pressed her cleavage into his face. Well, You don't think that maybe the whole situation that just arose here is a sign that maybe life's giving you a break? She smiled as she unzipped the top of her nanosuit just enough. I mean, a beautiful planet full of gorgeous chicks who like to be naked all the time, and who very obviously have a thing for you despite the fact it's only been a day. Andrea looked at the assembled ladies with a side glance and smirk. But maybe it could possibly be a thing where the universe is like, I've nearly wiped this guy out and he's had enough. He needs to start living again. Here, bro, have a bunch of gorgeous naked women. You ever think of that? She finished removing her top and slipped out of it. That doesn't work like that. So maybe, just maybe, take advantage? I mean, these girls are clearly very into you. How could they not be? She shoved her cleavage into his face once again. Think about it, dumbass! She yelled, put her top back on, then casually walked out. Come on, ladies. Our future husband needs to think a bit. Andrea ushered the group out, leaving Marcus sitting in his seat with his jaw open, closing the door behind them. Okay, so... Oh, come on. I know. Look, that glint in your eyes, that shiver in your bones, that little tingle you have when you hear his voice. You cannot tell me you aren't into him. I'm not a scion, and even I can tell these things. Andrea pointed her finger at them accusingly. Well, Saris shyly squirmed. So here's the short story as to why you like him so much. He's devoted to any cause and never fails to finish it. He's a family man who will do anything for his kin. He's good-looking and extremely smart because you need to be in order to be a corsair for any length of time. And he's essentially a war hero engineer. He's stupid rich despite what he says, and he has one of the most beautiful ships in the entire sector. I'm not surprised you get a bit wet when you get close. Andrea playfully spanked Saris. Well, wow. Okay. All the girls blushed. Okay. So what do we do now? Jacqueline asked as she picked her jaw off the floor. Patience. I have planted the seed. Soon enough he will open up. I would strongly recommend you take the chance when he offers it. I grew up with that man. I know for a fact he's worth the effort, Andrea said, getting close to Saris. She grabbed the elf girl and kissed her. Saris was taken completely off guard as Andrea gently booped her nose after pulling away with a sultry smile. "I'm looking forward to it. You are so soft." Andrea playfully gave Serena's rear a gentle pat, then walked out the door to the hangar. Marcus remained silent for the remainder of the day. After the close encounter with Andrea leaving him a bit shaken, he left the ship under Arcturus's command and decided to take a flight to clear his head. He pulled out a very small two-person helicopter known as a Little Bird and quickly flew away. The first thing he did was to do a flyby of the air purifier towers he built and see what was going on. The enormous mass of trees had begun completely surrounding the tower, encroaching on the factory floor nearby and crawling all over the tower. Drones fluttering about in a frenzy, trimming rapidly growing branches and roots in an attempt to train the trees to not grow in certain places. Marcus took a good look around it, taking notes in his head as to how the trees had learned not to clog up the conveyor belts or grew around doors that drones used. The trees had also grown a lot more within the last 24 hours, with new roots spreading almost everywhere, and the trees themselves now almost 4 meters higher than previous. Marcus shook his head and flew past another part of the factory, one that had been deactivated. Various assembly machines and equipment, all leading to a silo dug deep into the underground closed by a hatch. Various belts and mechanical arms waiting at specific locations to place in tech and ingredients for processing. An ICBM silo. A long pipe pumping in a yellow liquid with a separate belt loading in high-grade nuclear warheads. Marcus sighed, shaking his head and pressed some buttons on his wearable. The silo was ripped out of the ground, disassembled, and the hole filled in completely. Marcus continued his journey for the next 2 hours, just flying for the sake of it, running up and down the factory complex, chasing one of the trains that were still running, and enjoying the view from above the factory. A factory that was slowly being disassembled as parts and components for various items either transferred ownership from him to the priests, or were simply disassembled for resources. Drones that used to carry his blue and purple paint job were now sporting a scarlet, red, and gold. Marcus decided to head into a small clearing amidst 6 purifier towers, dead center of the factory. He landed in the middle of this clearing, turning the engine off. He stood still for a few moments, taking a deep breath. He clapped his hands together twice, and the factory suddenly stopped. The loud screeching of metal filled the air as trains suddenly slammed on the brakes, while the happy hum of drones flying around suddenly wound down to a stop. The beautiful roar of nuclear reactors and power generators slowed to an imperceptible background hum, while the sparking from battery banks and capacitors suddenly ceased. Within seconds, the entire area went dead silent. Noise that carried for miles around suddenly stopped. The roaring trains and flying machines that comprised the factory just plain ended. Marcus sat quietly on the ground in the grass for a few minutes, just breathing in the sounds of simple silence. The quiet didn't last long, and Marcus laughed to himself half-heartedly as the noise of nature took over the noise of the factory. Birds, creatures, deer, even the roar of a bear coming from the forests that now surround the air purifiers. The only true silence is that which is found after death, he said to himself with a smirk, remembering a phrase his grandfather used to say. He used his wearable device and typed a few things. A hologram of a massive circular building appeared in front of him, encompassing almost the entirety of the circular clearing. It was a massive cathedral-like structure, sporting his family colors, corporate emblem, and faction logos on banners and etched into walls and reliefs. He looked at it momentarily and shook his head. No, Dad wouldn't want this, he said to himself and erased the blueprint completely. Marcus sat quietly on the ground, starting fresh. A plain and simple design was chosen this time, a standard rectangular-shaped cathedral with offshoot rooms on either side. It was a large building in the style of Notre Dame, but the Gothic style was removed, replaced with Mechanicus decorations and reliefs, mixed with the local medieval Elven-style architecture instead. The exterior had Mechanicus reliefs etched into it, the main structure built of a mixture of granite as a base, slate and marble as the rim and detail. The columns and exterior pillars, made to appear like cogwheels, gears, mechanisms, or pistons. The front end of it was a mixture of architecture, with the sharp angles of High Gothic mixed with the curvy, natural Elven nature designs. Marcus made sure to incorporate specific places around it full of nutrient-rich soil for trees to grow freely. Markings on the sides by the roof made it easy for vines and other plants to climb up the wall. The exterior grounds were transformed into a large park with fountains, a hedge maze, rose garden, and all of it surrounded by a large wall made of French and English lavender. The interior was built as a massive mausoleum, with the majority of space underground in massive tombs, connected by a single central circular stairway with a lift. The underground tombs stretched nearly a half-mile down, and the spires and towers upwards of 20 stories high. After adding details such as banners, faction logos, emblems, and patterns on various pillars, he started working on more important details: trees, flower beds, an irrigation system, among other things, but one feature standing out: a small sapling growing in the absolute center of the building, in the middle of the large staircase leading to the lower floors. His projections showed it growing to massive size, with the stained glass windows on every wall and tower allowing sunlight to get through to grow it. Marcus made some final changes to the layout to make it easier to move around, making some fancier artwork and working with other parts. After 6 hours of sitting on the grass, Marcus was finally satisfied with his work. Standing up, he clapped his hands again, and the sudden merciless roar of engines, trains, and machines flooded the air as the factory once again sprang to life. Marcus took one more look at his creation and finalized the design. Marcus' flagship suddenly started churning its own internal factories, and the reactor, which had been idling quietly for a while, reactivated to a glorious whine as it went straight up to 80% power. A compartment in the lower sections of the ship, along the entire lower hull closest to the ground, opened up, leaving a ramp down. This revealed a massive army of hundreds of heavily customized robots. Large tracked drones the size of elephants with heavy arms awoke with a low groan. "By the glory of Gaia, I have awoken," they all said in unison, the chorus of artificial voice and mechanical grinding echoing through the air for miles. They unfolded to their full height of 8 meters in 2 perfect lines of machines. As soon as they hit the grass, the line of droids behind them roared to life. Humanoid construction, each one wearing a heavy cloak similar to that of the priests, but in Marcus's colors with the Mechanicus logo. By the strength of the machine, they all yelled in perfect chorus. They unfolded themselves in a perfect display of coordination, then marched in lockstep down the ramp. Finally, behind them, a litany of cargo drones, each one capable of carrying an insanely heavy load, started up. The air filled with the thunderous screech of jet engines and screaming machinery. By the void we renew the cycle. The mechanical chorus echoed across the valley once again. The larger machines numbered 57. The humanoid machines numbered 208. The flyers numbered 72. By our will and our will alone, the universe begins to move. The army of machines quickly assembled in a parade outside the ship. They marched with purpose towards the central clearing where Marcus was standing. The loud footsteps and monstrous roar of engines echoed through the air. The voices of the machines, starting a low, beautiful chant, flooded the valley. The footsteps formed a beat. The low hum of the engines and clanking of tank tracks quickly conformed into a rhythm. The machines began to sing in a Gregorian chant along with their beat, the music booming through the atmosphere. A mixture of both their artificial voices, the marching of their feet, and the roaring echo of their music sent shockwaves through the world that could hear it. The words spoken made sense only to Marcus and the machines. Even Arcturus was fully into it, his own voice broadcast inside the ship, added to the chorus as they marched with purpose. The song was a machine god rendition of Salve Regina to a mecha-punk-style melody. Within the ship itself, all the guests, both the royal delegation and the lovely ladies, were awestruck at the sight. Even the priesthood was shocked, and were in visible ecstasy at the sight of each machine. Jacqueline was more enamored than the others were. Her elven eyes made sure she could see every last detail on the machines. The machine priests were beside themselves with happiness. The elves looked to them for guidance, trying to understand what was going on. They were simply waved away and told to leave Marcus alone while he mourned in peace. Jacqueline looked and noticed something about this new army. Every last machine had fundamental differences about its construction. Every detail and trim piece, decoration, or extra bit on each one was different in one way or another. Bulkier arms on one, thinner but stronger arms on the other. A different pattern etched into the armor plating, a set of exposed cables wrapped into a different pattern here and there. Different toys such as teddies, ribbons, or other small paraphernalia hanging from various points, or worn as backpacks by the machines. Every last machine on that field was made entirely by hand. It didn't take long for the machines to reach their destination. Within seconds, they began to build, digging, hauling, cutting parts of the mountain, and all working in a perfect synchronized chorus, still singing their mechanical hymn as the massive cathedral structure took shape absurdly fast. The heavier machines cutting solid, multi-ton blocks of stone, the flyers carrying it to a precise spot, then the smaller ones using hand tools with their machine precision and speed to cut the blocks to size, then detailing them. The entire process, to those who could see or hear it, was mesmerizing. A mixture of emotions ran through the spectators: terror, reverence, awe, and shock at the sight of these machines working away in perfect harmony as the building slowly assembled. Andrea wiped a tear off her cheek. "Welp, I guess he found home." "What?" Saris asked with a crooked brow. "The youngling has found home. He's assembling the mausoleum that will serve his family, likely for generations to come. It looks like he's planning to stay after all." "See?" one of the priests said as Marcus's banner was raised on the main spire. "So he's home? What does this mean exactly?" Ariana asked. "It means a lot of things, but mostly it means Marcus is staying here to start a new home, a new life. A move which I will formally endorse, of course," Edward said as he looked out the window. "Do your people not have a claim on the forgotten human lands at all?" one of the Mechanicus priests asked. "No. We had our own problems and were fearful of the plague possibly affecting us, so we had long since abandoned that prospect. I see no reason to pursue that line of thinking anyway, especially not now," Taris replied with a somber tone. "What exactly does this mean for us, though?" Valerian asked as he peered out at the construction, now recognizing some of the stylistic choices in its design. "We will continue operations as normal for now, but it is likely that your ascension will take nowhere near as much time as expected. With the Mechanicus here to properly guide you, as well as Marcus's exceptional military presence, it is likely you will be out of reach of any meddling authorities for the foreseeable future," the priest said, smiling at the crowd. "That was an issue before then?" Saris asked with a scared squeak in her voice. "Oh yes. Humanity has never forgotten its petty squabbles or personal idiocy. But you see, Marcus is a Corsair. You are in safe hands." "Cult Machine and a Corsair? You are in safe hands," Andrea responded with a sly smirk. Arcturus and the priest chuckled at that, and resumed watching the finishing touches on the massive mausoleum. The group just stood there in silence, watching the spectacle unfold. After several hours, it was finally done. The machines inspected their work and then lined up, making a full procession as the main cargo hold was finally opened. With exceptional care, every coffin, urn, and box was removed one by one and carried into the building. Marcus stood at the entrance, placing his hand on each one, uttering a prayer and personal goodbye to each. With each coffin that had flags or military honors, Marcus presented a salute and carefully folded each flag and banner, placing it in an ornate flagpole above the tomb himself. Slowly the death march carried on, and the procession was only done shortly before dinner time. The entire time this happened, the priests and guests simply watched, trying to be as unobtrusive as possible. When dinner finally came around, Marcus joined everyone for the meal, but remained silent through the evening, then sealed himself off in the bridge for the night. Andrea simply shrugged when the others asked for guidance, simply saying, "Let him mourn in peace." The following morning, Marcus went outside at the first light of the day and observed his handiwork. He chuckled at the sight of saplings growing, vines spreading, and forestry already beginning to encroach on the building, being carefully tended by the machines that laid the foundation. When Marcus was finally satisfied, he returned to the main hall where negotiations were being conducted, remaining quiet for proceedings. Andrea walked in the room, immediately catching his eye. He walked up to her and grabbed her, hauling her over his left shoulder. She squealed, alerting everyone to his presence. He then walked over to Saris. He grabbed her too, hauling her over his right shoulder. He then carried the pair towards the door. He turned around, looking at the crowd. "Mine," he said with a firm growl, then disappeared down the corridor. The looks on Andrea and Saris's faces said it all as they both looked back at the crowd, jaws wide open. "Well then, I guess this is where the chapter ends and a new story begins," one of the priests said with a smile. "And the next one will have to be heavily censored," another replied, both of them having a laugh. The chamber went into hysterics and abandoned further proceedings, deciding to use the opportunity of the lightheartedness to have a little party instead. With everything now in hand, the entire world breathed a sigh of relief.